Hello and welcome to CherrySTEM.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, hi. We're here again with you all to talk about some really fun stuff. Super extra fun. I'm really excited about this. It's going to be a good one. It's both news seed and conspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
Best of both worlds. So are UFOs real? Have they landed? Is there a secret Pentagon program looking at stuff? I don't know. Let's find out. There might be. There is. Spoilers, there is.
Spoilers, aliens are real.
Spoilers. Indeed. Now let me make sure I have the chat on. There we go.
We should probably give like a running start at it. What are we talking about? What are we talking about?
What are we going to tell you? We will tell you, but first we'll tell you what we tell you.
Yeah, we're going to tell you what we're going to tell you. Then tell you. Then tell you what we told you. All right, I got to move with the kitty here. The kitty's he's very upset about me moving because he had a good comfortable spot on my lap.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Sorry, kitty.
Sorry, kitty.
All right. So back in 2017, there was a release of some videos of UFOs, and
I believe we did cover that Navy
Probably.
video in our CherrySTEM in the past. I
Yeah.
will try to remember to put a
'Cause
card here now to that.
so the reason we're talking about this is because, I guess it was probably September-ish. I don't know, late last year. The Navy eventually said that the stuff that came out back in 2017 was indeed their videos. So basically, the videos themselves have been verified, but beyond that,
Well,
there have been.
Can we tell people what was in the videos, especially for the listeners?
Okay, for the listeners, there's basically two major sets of videos. One is the Tic Tac, and the other is Gimbal. Are the names of them, and I think they actually happen on the two opposite coasts, and they're pretty significantly different. A lot of people don't know that they're significantly different, but because they were witnessed by different people. But there's actually we'll end up recommending a video that is the one of the commanders who were in charge of the people who witnessed it. Like one of the commanders who was in charge on I think it was on the East Coast one, which is the Tic Tac event with the Nimitz. He visually saw it with his own eyes, not just with radar. Well, actually, they couldn't see it with radar. It was jamming radar, but
Potentially actively jamming radar.
Specifically, yeah, it's the way that they detect it is active radar jamming, which is theoretically an act of war.
That's what the commander's like. By the way, that's an act of war. But yeah, we couldn't read them.
Right. So it was active jamming.
Technically.
There's a good interview with him, and he goes into all the stuff. So here's the thing.
It's a Joe Rogan Experience that we will be linking.
So when it first came out back in 2017, it was related to this Luis Elizondo guy. I just happen to remember his name. He is part of this. There's like two different programs. One's AA TIP, and the other is AA something else. I don't know. There's
anomalous, autonomous. There's some sort of acronym, right?
Yeah, of course, it's an acronym. And so there's two different things. AA TIP is the group associated with Bigelow Aerospace, which is interesting, and we're going to try to get all these things. So I'm just kind of giving you hints
giving a
about
rundown.
There's a lot of different people involved.
A little teaser.
It's a black
table of contents, if you will.
Is a black budget investigation of unidentified aerial phenomena because of specifically. It was already known that there was a 2004 event. So the release was in 2017 of the information that people that really made a big splash. But there was an event in 2004 where they had been watching these UFOs for like 2 straight weeks via various sets of equipment, which apparently was with radar. So apparently sometimes they block radar, sometimes they don't. But so these events that came out in 2017, and we're gonna probably. Did you want to read through the articles? That we're gonna do? Okay, so we're gonna do a little read through of one of the best articles that really gives a good rundown of it. But something to just tell you beforehand is that these UFOs are performing maneuvers that are far beyond what should be physically possible according to modern physics. Period. and they've been eyewitnessed by various military personnel. And this is really not, unless there is a giant hoax being perpetrated by the military itself, then there is technology operating on this planet that does not fit within physics as we know it. And given the way that these events match up with far older events, it seems unlikely that it is in any way related to just advanced technology that we own. And there's a variety of things that I'll go ahead and cover once we're kind of done here that show that it's a little absurd to believe that it is anybody's technology here on Earth. So we'll go into, and I'll talk about some of the interview. So I mean, we'll also just recommend the interview that you can watch, because it's a nice long interview, and he gives way more information about it, and because he's in being part of the Navy. I think he was Navy, and then there's another ship where there was two different ships that were involved in the Nimitz Tic Tac event. And so there's actually three major ones that we actually have films on. That's Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Go Fast. And all of them show very amazing things occurring that are far beyond physics. And in each and every case, these people are still right now actively being debriefed and doing interviews with highest levels of government. And this pilot, he was able to say that that these people that he is debriefing, none of them are they're all acting very surprised at the highest levels of government. So basically, you kind of have to be ignorant of all of the evidence and the various military people involved to believe that this is no longer a real thing. And so let's go ahead and read through this article. It's a good article. This just came out February 14th, I believe, in Popular Mechanics. And so this is my favorite article, so we're going to go ahead and read that. Did you want me to read it, or did you want to read it, or did you want to pass it back and forth?
Yeah, I thought we might, I would start reading it, and then we'll see.
Do a little handoff?
Yeah, because I feel like you might be adding a lot with extra information that isn't in the article. But if you don't, then we'll just switch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I might stop you at various points to make some comments that are interesting. Because, for instance, one of the things that is not mentioned in a lot of places that's kind of hard to find is one of the eyewitness accounts by pilots was that there was a cube inside of a sphere that was about it's about 3 feet in size, and it's just this round glowing thing that entered one of the formations. It just went right into their formation. And of course, if that was our super hyper advanced technology, then then we've got
they're breaking protocol.
We got morons. Somehow we've got some crazy morons running the most advanced important technology on the planet.
Right.
If that was the case. Because going into the middle of a military formation with some sort of hyper advanced drone without telling them is a good way to cause a crash. It's it's completely irresponsible. There's a wide variety of things. That's just one example.
As compartmentalized as the military apparatus is, there are ways they're required to communicate with each other in ways that conflict.
Well, and there's certain things that you don't do.
Right.
You just
there
don't.
is protocol.
There's certain things you just do not do.
My point is there is protocol, even with them being sort of against each other at times. There's still cooperative protocol.
But beyond that, we're going to go over some things here, and you're going to see that it paints a picture that is, you kind of have to purposely stick your head in the sand to not believe that it is what it is obvious. So let's just go ahead and read through it.
Let's do it. Are UFOs real? Inside Pentagon's secret UFO program.
Yes, there's a good little history of all that stuff that happened.
Right, and I do like the, not just, I do like the aspect of history too. So we could have done a show that is here are the latest things, but I prefer to do it a little more comprehensively
that's why you get the whole
outlining everything.
Yeah, it's a nice outline of the story.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, by Tim McMillan on February 14th, 2012. So Valentine's
2020,
Day.
yeah.
Sorry, 2020. Yeah, Valentine's Day.
You said 2012. A little slip of the lip there.
Yeah. The government can't keep its story straight about its involvement with UFO research. After a year-long investigation, we bust open the files, break through the noise, and reveal the definitive, staggering truth. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, I love how they'll sit there and they like to keep the suspense going, because there's certain things
That's
like
fun.
where the what the Pentagon replies with keeps changing, and so it's
In
interesting.
terms of like them asking for comment, or
Yes, like there's like whenever you get the official word, just read. It's great. This story
All
is
right,
it's
let's do it.
unbelievable. Have you read through all of this?
I have not.
Oh my God,
I am a virgin.
You're gonna fucking love this.
To
This
this
is great.
story. I am. This is like the Joe Rogan experience, is the Cherry experience, meaning you tell me of all the things, and me and the audience are both the layman that is like asking the dumb questions or whatever. So well, I feel like that's the benefit, or the unique sort of experience that you get through Joe Rogan, is that he invites experts on and concepts that he's curious about but doesn't have a lot of information in. And so the whole thing is just you are there with him exploring a new topic from a perspective of someone who doesn't know much but is learning stuff. And so I really like that. It is important, and I feel like we unintentionally end up doing that all the time, because you are the expert and I am the layman frequently. So hopefully people can have a similar experience of being able to relate with some of the questions I ask, and not necessarily knowing everything.
All right.
So yeah, let's
get you a swig of that water so you can do this nice long talk here. The kitty he is holding on for life on your lap there. All right, how are you gonna read it with it that small? You're gonna have to bring it up so that you can read it, right? Or are you just reading some viewer comments first? You want to go through some?
Yeah, it was just a little nitpick, I suppose, or if you can say that, a point or I guess a concern raised over the last thing you mentioned,
Which is?
about
Yes.
the hyper advanced drones and having to be crazy to fly.
Yeah,
that's not a good argument, is what Chad is saying, or something. I'm not
That's
really
not
sure.
a good argument to that. It's one of numerous things. Yeah, no, a drone shouldn't just suddenly.
As in other words,
unannounced.
there are test pilots who would use it to prank other pilots.
Yeah, I guess, sure. You could say that you've got the most advanced technology on the planet.
Hyper clearance that eyes only, nobody
right,
even
and
knows.
you got irresponsible. Sure, that's a pot.
Well, no, you're just pranking people with the thing that nobody's supposed to lay eyes on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. The thing that is most important, that you don't go and just show the whole world, because it's that completely secret. But no, you're just gonna do that. Yeah. I mean, there's the possibility. Here's the thing: anything's open for doubt. I mean,
sure.
I could go into doubt that the Earth is round. Yeah, there is always a way to sit there and talk about and find ways. It's like, well, have you ever gone all the way around? Have you been in space? Those photos could all be doctored. It's like there's always room for doubt. You can always but then there's looking at a wide variety of things. Yes, exactly. Likelihood. And then what you have to do is look at a lot of different
So I guess we should
sets
have
of
mentioned
data.
that the likelihood of it being somebody pranking is so low that we don't believe that it's a valid.
Yeah, it's always
thing.
possible that
Right.
somebody, and then they got court-martialed, and
Right.
it's
And
like
nobody heard about it because it was top secret.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's all that possibility, except it just doesn't fit with a wide variety of other things that are going on as well. So yes, that one, if you take that one thing out of context by itself, I agree that is not a perfect argument. But then again, I don't believe there is such a thing as a perfect argument. So
well, that kind of goes back to my point, which is why I'd like to read this whole thing and give people a history lesson in everything that we as humans on this planet know about aliens, which is in this article. Because if you do take these events by themselves, once again, they are not like in that my favorite metaphor for investigatory detective work, unless you have a signed confession. So unless aliens have landed on the White House lawn, you don't have irrefutable proof. You don't have a signed confession. So how else, as a detective,
that may have actually even happened, but
not helpful to my story.
Yes.
Thanks.
There were jets scrambled and everything. There was a major event where there was a flyover of Washington and yeah.
We don't have a signed confession by aliens. We do not have irrefutable presence of aliens.
Here's the thing.
Therefore, how does a detective make his case? Evidence. Compiling as much evidence as possible. That's
a constellation of evidence.
Right. So
that all points to the same thing.
Yes. So just isolating this one incident
it is not
as
adequate.
You were saying,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely, it's not adequate.
And that's
certainly
why I'd like to read the whole thing.
That one thing by itself, certainly not adequate. Totally agree with that.
And that attitude could be used on every single event that we've experienced taken in isolation, which is why I like to give all the events, because hopefully.
Yeah. So are you going to switch over to the thing to start reading?
Why are you rushing me?
Oh no, I'm just I'm excited. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Ready to do this.
Am I hosting the show wrong?
No.
Am I doing something wrong? Okay, so yes. Well, I was also just kind of waiting for a response to our response, potentially. So, because we just refuted something that chat was saying.
Well, I mean, I think they understand because I basically said yes to both things. Yes, there are ways in which that there are arguments against that. Yes, it doesn't stand on its own, but no, it is not something that you can just throw away as irrelevant.
I guess the question is, what would be a better argument than a secret test pilot wouldn't be that crazy? Like, how else do you explain, like...
What do you mean?
Well, in other words, we're saying that it couldn't have been an alien sphere inside, or in other words, it could only have been an alien square inside a sphere because no secret program would be that.
No, what I'm saying is it makes it extremely unlikely that it is U.S. operated. At that point, you'd have to say it's some other foreign country or something else. In other words, usually if it's that makes it much less likely as the point, like by a very significant amount. So anyway.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it's always within the realm of possibility.
And there's the whole weird ball lightning thing that people are recently talking about.
That's completely irrelevant. Why you bring that up?
Because I feel like people that were listening to that show in particular were with that guy where it's like, oh, so that explains it.
No, I mean, okay, you can't address everybody.
Because they're like, oh, it flew down
you cannot
that
address
airplane
people.
wing, so...
You cannot address extremes. There's no possibility of helping people with very, very extreme. They absolutely, positively want to believe no matter what, or absolutely, positively want to not believe no matter what. Those people, there's no point in ever addressing their ideas, their concerns, their beliefs. It's completely pointless. You can only address those people who are in the middle. And so just keep that in mind.
Okay, yeah. And I tend to try to structure. I do try to look for a perfect argument.
Right.
And I guess that's my problem.
No. There are people who, until the aliens will land, it'll be all over the news and they'll say it's demons that did it. And that people are all crazy. And that it's gas. And that they're all hallucinating. And until they see them themselves. And even then, they won't necessarily believe it because of some set of beliefs that they have that are very important to them. So, no, I mean, you cannot address true believers or true skeptics, because true skeptics are true believers. They're the exact same people. They just have a different set of beliefs. So anyway, let's go ahead and continue forward, though, instead of doing too much about chat, because I'd really like to get into the article, because that's what we need to get to. We need to get to the constellation of evidence, the wide variety of things that all point to the same thing.
Oh, we got a clarification. It's mostly the point of pilots equals always responsible is the qualm. More than anything, but I guess
here's the thing: anything you hear me say for the rest of time, if you ever listen to me at all whatsoever, I know that there are exceptions, and I generally tend to speak about rules, and if I'm saying an exception, I'll try to point it out. But the point is, of course, there's an exception. I do not believe in absolute 100% perfect rules that are never broken, except for just very, very damn few things in physics that we just haven't seen it broken. But then again, we're talking about things that we're absolutely laws of physics are being broken in front of people's eyes.
Right, that's a better
very
argument.
Reputable people's eyes that it does not fit within our laws of physics, and that's because we have not witnessed these things prior to now. But,
and the pilot's being responsible is not your only argument. The laws of physics and a variety of others. It just so happened to be one.
That's why I want to move forward, because we are stuck here talking about something that will be blown away by the evidence that we're going to talk about right now.
Cool. Let's
move forward.
Okay. I don't want to move forward.
I noticed. I've been trying to move forward. Like, can we move forward? Hey, how about we move forward? I'd like to move forward. Can we go forward? Forward would be good. You know what direction would be great? Forward.
As I sit in a small cafe in the shadow of ancient Roman gates in Trier, Germany, talking to a person whose credibility seems beyond reproach, but who will only agree to talk to me if provided absolute assurance of anonymity, I can't help but feel I'm trapped in a Dan Brown novel. The Da Vinci Code, however, never dealt with unidentified flying objects. Was it about UFOs? Of course, this person whispers with a grin of melodrama. After almost a year of investigating the U.S. government's interest in UFOs, what they've just said should neither be shocking nor revelatory. Unbeknownst to them, they've only further confirmed that over a dozen other people with backgrounds inside the government and now defunct Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies have already admitted to me. Just like the fictional Robert Langdon, the path to understanding these mysterious government programs has taken me through the catacombs of informal secret societies whose surprising memberships include accomplished professionals from the military, aerospace, academic, medical, and intelligence communities. Though diverse or abstinent in how they define exactly what it all means, each of these enigmatic characters shares one common belief. Unidentified flying objects are neither myth nor figment of overactive imagination. With absolute conviction, they've told me that UFOs are real. Now, over 2 years of scant details and myriad of contradictory statements, Popular Mechanics has ripped open the US government's massive UFO problem. What follows is a deep, unprecedented well of information that's only been known by a very small select group of insiders until now. And they're not being melodramatic. That's actually true. They are actually 100% putting together stuff that's never been put together quite like that before. And now...
little bits and pieces of this have come out repeatedly.
Comprehensive.
This is a long article, so if we go slow like this, it's going to take a very long time. I could do the reading now if you'd like, and then we'll stop periodically if you like. But if we stop too much like this, it's going to be very difficult to get through this article.
Well, I'm not going to try... do you mean my speed of reading, or do you mean making pauses?
Both.
Because my speed of reading is something that I consider to be understandable by people listening. And whenever you read, I cannot understand you. Therefore, other people cannot understand you, is my assumption.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I speak
at
a
I'd
rate
like to know this article.
Roughly the same as...
when you speak, but not when you read. There's a massive difference the way... to me.
I don't think so.
There's a massive difference in when you're telling me stuff versus when you're reading me stuff. I have a really hard time. So I will try to read fast. How about that?
Sure.
Okay. Part 1, the disclosure and diversity.
Asshole. Asshole.
Sorry. Part 1, the disclosure. On December 16th, 2017, the New York Times disclosed, and we talked about this, disclosed that the Pentagon has secretly funded research into UFOs through the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP. As if the U.S. government quietly investigating UFOs wasn't enough, for the first time, the public also got a chance to see the videos captured by U.S. Navy, showing what has been claimed to be unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAP. That is their favorite little word for it. They love the UAP. So it's no longer UFO, because those are scary.
Yes, please don't call it UFO. It's a UAP.
UAPs are okay. In an instant, UFOs were no longer relegated to society's nihilistically curious, and for the first time in decades, droves of mainstream public suddenly found themselves peering skyward with wonder. But almost as quickly as the excitement of mysterious black-budget UFO program crashed ashore, so too came vexing waves of criticism, confusion, and controversy. From the onset, disarray and debate raged on whether the second A in ATIP officially stood for aerospace or aviation, with the former aerospace eventually proving to be correct. Adding to the chaos, an entirely different program moniker emerged: Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application, or Program, or AWSAP. For over 2 years, no one has been able to adequately explain whether AAWSAP and ATIP are two separate programs or the same, intuitive, under two separate names. To muddle matters more, a revolving door of Pentagon spokespeople have successfully issued waves of contradictory statements about what the Department of Defense did or didn't do when it came to studying UFOs. Initially, the Pentagon said AATIP had indeed investigated UFOs under the leadership of Luis Elizondo, a former senior member of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense of Intelligence. Eventually, in a complete reversal of official stances, the Pentagon's newly crowned UFO point person, senior strategic planner, and spokesman Susan Go recently told the Black Vault neither AAWSAP nor ATIP were UAP related. Elizondo was not the director of ATIP, and he didn't have assigned responsibilities within the program. In some consolation to the UFO faithful, the DoD has consistently been willing to say they consider the curious objects shown in 2017 video to be unexplained UAP. What exactly that means, however, has been open for interpretation and debate. After months of conducting interviews and uncovering previously undisclosed materials, Popular Mechanics is revealing here that the U.S. government does indeed have a definite interest in UFOs, provided, of course, nobody says it out loud. Part 2. The Seeds. The path to truly understanding the Pentagon's current UFO problems doesn't begin in 2008 with the Defense Intelligence Agency and the AAWSAP, but rather a decade earlier, and some 2,000 miles from the nation's capital on the doorstep of a billionaire Nevada entrepreneur. Robert T. Bigelow, the owner of Budget Suites of America and founder of the space technology company Bigelow Aerospace, has never shied away from amplifying his interest in UFOs. In a 2017 interview, Bigelow told CBS 60 Minutes he was absolutely convinced aliens exist, before passionately declaring, "I don't give a damn," when asked if it was too risky to publicly say he believes in UFOs and aliens. In 1995, 4 years before the founding of his aerospace startup, Bigelow established the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, NIDS. From the company's cached website, NIDS described itself as a privately funded space institute engaged in research of aerial phenomenon, animal mutilations, and other related anomalous phenomena.
Look at that 90s design, man. I
Is
had
that
a
the cached website
that looked just like that.
Oh, I thought
so
this,
much like that.
I thought this was System Shock Game.
That's a 90s website for you right there, man.
Oh,
that's
so
cute.
Matrix influence.
I know, right? Okay.
Oh,
isn't it cute? Okay, go ahead.
Before ultimately disbanding in 2004, NIDS conducted research into a host of various paranormal topics such as cryptid encounters, cattle mutilations, and especially UFOs. The group's most recognized research was the investigation of a purported paranormal Utah homestead owner by Bigelow called Skinwalker Ranch, which would later play a significant role in DIA's UFO interest. In a 2008 interview with the New York Magazine, former Nevada Senator Harry Reid told an interesting tale about a curious letter Bigelow received from a senior official from a federal national security agency. "I'm interested in talking to you, Mr. Bigelow. I have an interest in what you've been working on. I want to go to your ranch in Utah," Reid recounted. After vetting the letter's author, the individual Reid described as a very low-key scientist was granted a pass to visit Bigelow's ranch. In a lecture at UFO MegaCon in 2019, KALS Las Vegas reporter George Knapp told the crowd that these events occurred in 2007 and claimed the person, described by Knapp as a DIA scientist, had an experience while visiting the supposed paranormal site. In an interview with researchers Joe Muriga, former AAWSAP contractor and astrophysicist Eric Davies shared what colleagues had told him of the DIA scientist's experience. Quote, "In the living room of the former NIDS double-wide observation trailer staff quarters, a 3D object appeared in mid-air in front of him and changed shape like a changing topological figure. It went from pretzel shaped to Mobius strip shaped. It was 3D and multicolored, then it disappeared." Side note. So, okay. Aliens, right? On one hand, flying observations are great. On the other hand, paranormal locations? No, sir. I disagree. I do not believe in paranormal locations. I do not, in other words, where my skepticism starts to kick in is in paranormal. So this is the place where people have sightings. Go there, you will see an alien. Don't like that. I don't like that at all because I feel like it could be literal electromagnetic fucking hallucinations that people are experiencing. Why would an alien be tethered to any specific place?
Hallucinations are not shared between people where you got a large number of people seeing the same thing.
But they didn't say that they had the same thing. They just said they had an experience.
No,
and it's not a consistent experience.
I don't think you're understanding. It was a demonstration. In other words, he was going to review something. He arrived at the place where they store materials.
Where they have paranormal sightings.
No, it's not just
that's what they said. Paranormal sightings ranch.
Go back. No,
that's what he called it.
Well, Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, it's a paranormal sightings ranch.
Let's see where does it say that?
while visiting the supposed paranormal site.
Okay, Skinwalker Ranch is actually where it's. I think the paranormal site is just a coincidence.
Okay. Because I hate them saying that because it's like
Skinwalker Ranch has been for a long period of time. From what I understand, okay, so there's like Native American sites, and there's Native American sites that are associated with frequently seeing UFOs. That's a thing. And so they're not bringing it up here.
I just don't like that.
Because there's entrances and exits to places that are the same. Like for instance, Hesdalen Lights. You see that it's in the same valley over and over and over. That they have these exact same phenomena.
Why
in Hesdalen? Well, because there may be
like an observation station.
Right. Exactly. There's thoroughfares.
Like landing.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so, that makes sense.
So,
because I do have a healthy skepticism for certain experiences that people have alien abduction experiences.
Right.
I have skepticism, but I also believe where people had strange metals found in their bodies.
Here's the thing. It does not matter that there's 10,000 crazy people saying a bunch of nonsense. Okay, there's where we're talking about.
But we're trying to parse signal from the noise.
These are scientists and just keep going. Okay, that's the point. Is you got to keep going so you don't lose context and focus on one little thing, and instead see the bigger picture of all of the variety of things coming to the same conclusions. Because if you get fixated on one thing at a time, you will not see the big picture. You'll be focused on one little thing at a time.
Okay. Well, yeah. Apparently, so Skinwalker immediately makes me think of Native.
I think it's a Native American.
It's a Native American site. Okay, that's a little different. Simply because there are definitely cattle mutilations. There are definitely crop circles that are not made by assholes with wooden planks, and there's definitely metals that were found inside, embedded in people's bodies that scientists cannot identify the composition of. These are things that have happened.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I haven't done enough research on that to necessarily agree with that.
Oh yeah, that was the thing. But according to chat, Skinwalker is one of those places where it has horror-like events frequently happening. So it would make sense that the government would station something there because it is a repeated place of strange activity. Yeah, and so that's why they probably called it a paranormal site, because it's aliens and weird shit.
But let's cut the noise here, because that's a bunch of noise that is irrelevant to this story.
Okay.
And so we can forget all of that. It's completely irrelevant. Let's pay attention to the relevant things that are that we should actually be talking about.
Sure.
So there's a scientist that's sent to look at some materials or whatever and is shown a three-dimensional volumetric display
in space,
which we don't even have. I know how to make one, but that's
my
not
issue
considered
is
current technology.
My worry, rather, not my issue, but my worry is that none of this will be enough by itself, because they're saying this is an anonymous person, but trust me, they're
you gotta go. No, they start out with them. Here's the thing: this article gets stronger and stronger as you go. They're purposefully giving you these little things to ease you into it. The speed at which this article does things is really neat. It's a very well paced article that gives you a bunch of the topical stuff and ease you into them. It gets harder and harder and harder.
Oh yeah, because so far it's too topical for me, buddy.
Yeah. No.
All right. Okay.
That's why you gotta
keep going
forward.
Gotcha.
Forward.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely forward.
You got it. According to Reed, whatever happened at Skinwalker was enough to convince the DIA to seriously investigate paranormal and UFO phenomena. Quote, "Something should be done about this. Somebody should study it. I was convinced he was right," Reed told the New York Times or Post or whatever. In an interview with Popular Mechanics, Hal Puthoff, a former subcontractor for the ATIP, confirms the scientist's visit, but was unsure how significant a role it played in the origins of AAWSAP. Quote, "Reed is correct that early on there was a DIA scientist who expressed interest in hearing of the Skinwalker Ranch and did visit," Puthoff says. Quote, "The degree to which this influenced initiation of AAWSAP program, however, or is just a side issue, I don't know." End quote. While Hal Puthoff, why do I know that name?
Because I've mentioned him numerous times.
Do you talk to him? Or he reads things you guys talk about?
I don't know.
Hal.
Yeah,
got it.
I don't know.
I'm there. I
Maybe.
remember. Yes.
Right.
I understand now.
Okay.
I remember. While we don't know how pivotal the Skinwalker visit was in the formation of the DIA's UFO studies, we do know that AAWA...
We're friends on LinkedIn.
There you go. And ATIP were already taking shape almost a year before funding was established and the solicitation was issued. Navy fighter pilot Commander David Fravor, that's the guy on the Rogan Experience, has arguably become the face of the famous UFO encounter by the Nimitz Strike Carrier Group. It was actually Marine Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Cheeks Kurth who was first directed to investigate the strange airborne contacts that radar operators captured in November 2004. So the Navy video that was admitted by the Navy as their video in 2017 was actually captured in 2004.
Right.
So this event it goes that far back.
Yeah, is that the Nimitz one? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, the Nimitz Strike Carrier Group, 2004.
Right.
On his LinkedIn profile.
Does it say that? What?
Yeah, Kurth.
Oh, okay.
Not Hal.
Okay.
Not Hal put off.
Like, what?
But there's Hal right there. There's a picture. He's Academy of Arts and Sciences.
If he's the Hal that I talk to regularly, the Hal I talk to regularly is a unbelievably smart dude. I mean, like mind-blowingly smart.
I don't know. He looks smart.
I don't know if it's the same guy, but
right. But you and this guy are friends on LinkedIn
for some reason.
Some reason. Cool. Maybe the same Hal you talked to.
He may just be a friendly dude. Maybe he's fine with LinkedIn. Who knows? Because I have not directly talked to him, knowing that is his name. I don't know if the other one is though.
On his LinkedIn profile, Kurth indicates he worked as a program manager for Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies until June 2013. Interestingly, Kurth began working for BAS in December 2007, a month before Bigelow officially established his LLC in January 2008. This might be because Nevada state records show that BAS was technically a subsidiary of another business owned by Bigelow, International Space Hardware Services. According to the Nevada Secretary of State's office, International Space Hardware Services was incorporated in 2007. Puthoff, who entered the BAS fold in 2008, tells Popular Mechanics he was aware that Kurth was involved in the Nimitz event in 2004, but he didn't believe BAS specifically recruited Kurth because of it. I think that it was just because of his experience he reached out to join BAS, says Puthoff, who later founded and now runs the Advanced Concept Research Institute EarthTech International. Puthoff says he believes the DIA has expressed a need for what would become AAWSAP in 2007, but isn't sure if the organization ever made a formal request. I think that anything from 2007 was quite likely informal. Discussions, letters, emails, but I'm not certain, he says. He says he's not certain a lot. That sounds like a smart guy.
I don't know if it's the same guy.
Still, though. I like that. I like that about people.
I know he's involved in this Hal is
Hal
also
Puthoff
involved
or your
in...
Hal?
No, this Hal, Puthoff, is also involved with an experiment that is doing nuclear fusion without the typical magnetic containment, and they're actually producing new materials. And I mean, it is been confirmed they're doing fusion in a way that it's never been done before. So yeah, that's neat. But that's an experiment that's funded by the DoD, when there's like, Lockheed Martin and all these. So the same guy who we're talking about here, who's involved with the all of these alien programs, is also involved in an advanced physics experiment right now. That is that I've been keeping up with. I don't even want to talk about for some reason. I don't know.
Don't talk about it.
Yeah.
You don't need it. You ain't got it. Puthoff says he believes. Okay, yeah. Regardless, roughly 6 months before BAS opened up shop.
I mean, it's publicly available.
Yeah.
It's
whatever.
Yeah.
I understand. Regardless, roughly 6 months before BAS opened up shop, with the support of late Senators Ted Stevens and Daniel Inouye, Reed set up funding for AATIP and AAWSAP contract in the Supplemental Appropriations Bill of July 2008. It would be black money. We wouldn't have a big debate on the Senate floor over it, Reed told in New York. The purpose of it was to study aerial phenomena. The money was given. A directive was given to the Pentagon to put this out to bid, which they did. On August 18, 2008, the contracting arm of the DIA issued a 32-page solicitation contract order for commercial items for the AAWSAP. When bidding closed 3 weeks later on September 5th, as the sole bidder, BAS was awarded $10 million for the guaranteed first year and a 5-year option for the contract. On September 13, 2008, Bigelow Aerospace began listing career opportunities with BAS in 14 different disciplines related to aerospace and research scientists.
Yeah, all these various entities. Oh, and there's one thing to I think they'll cover it here, so I'll just let it go. Yeah, they'll cover the ability to get around.
Yeah.
Freedom of Information Act stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is from here.
I think they're going to talk about it.
Absent from the AWSCP solicitation is any language related to UFOs or UAP. Instead, as originally outlined in the July Supplemental Appropriations Bill, the, quote, primary focus is on breakthrough technologies and applications that create discontinuities in currently evolving technology trends. The focus is not on extrapolations of current aerospace technology, end quote. In past interviews, Reed has indicated the interested parties at the DIA felt it prudent to avoid any language that might cause someone to realize the underlying focus of the ATIP program was UFOs. According to Reed, a representative with the DIA told him, "What I will do is prepare something for you that anyone can look at and wants to, and it's strictly science." On multiple occasions, over the past 2 years, both the government and former contractors have used the term ATIP and AWSAP almost interchangeably. This has caused significant confusion of whether ATIP and AWSAP were two separate programs or the same activity under differing names. In a recent statement, Pentagon spokesperson Susan Goh told longtime researcher John Greenwald, good job, ATIP was the name of the, oh, no, it's Glenn Greenwald, too many Greenwalds. ATIP was the name of the overall program. AWSAP was the name of the contract the DIA awarded for the production of technical reports under the ATIP. Wait, didn't Susan Goh earlier say that none of them ever looked at anything that involved UAPs?
Yes, and she's also the one. She's the one who's who is. She's. I think at some point she finally also flips. But before her, they said it did. Then with her, they said it.
Yeah,
didn't.
The previous guy said that
right.
Elizondo said, "Hell yeah."
Oh no, she's also saying that Elizondo wasn't involved. They'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna go look.
No, it's a typical, but this is the typical for secret stuff.
Yeah,
is they gotta keep it confused, and that's the best way. I mean, seriously, you don't keep things secret by just constantly not telling anybody because things get out. You
confusing information.
You give conflicting information. Yeah, you have to. You jam things with noise. And that's how
now with absence of noise.
Right. You can pick it out. If you don't just say the opposite, you say everything all over the place, nearby, up, down, left, right, all kinds of crazy shit. And
I could learn a thing from this.
And that's how you hide information is through noise.
I'm terrible at hiding information.
Yes.
While all sources associated with the program confirm Go's statement with Popular Mechanics, AAWSAP was the contract component of the broader umbrella program dubbed ATIP. They dismissed the latter sentiment expressed by Go that neither ATIP nor WSAP were UAP related. The evidence collected here overwhelmingly suggests the government was indeed studying UFOs and not, as Pentagon has said, investigating foreign advanced aerospace weapon system applications with future technology projections over the next 40 years and to create a center of expertise on advanced aerospace technologies.
And so here now, for those of you not looking at the screen, there's a picture of the BAASS,
Bigelow
Aerospace Advanced Space Studies 10-month report with a big old flying saucer printed on the front of it.
It is 3 lights that are combined with a triangle sheet together to look like a triangular flying thing with circles in the corners.
Yeah, not actually a saucer.
No.
But and by the way, there's plenty of videos like somebody did a collection of like. There's just tons and tons and tons of.
We'll have it in our public post.
Right, 3 light videos all across the world. Videos of these 3 lights, and it's always 3 light triangles is just one of the most common things that you'll see recorded in various videos.
Part 3: The report. On July 2009, BAS provided a comprehensive report to the DIA at the conclusion of the first-year option of the AWSAP contract. The 494-page, 10-month report, as it's called, is chock full of strategic plans, project summaries, data tables, charts, descriptions of biological field effects, physical characteristics, methods of detection, theoretical capabilities, witness interviews, photographs, and case synopses, each one entirely, explicitly, about unexplained aerial phenomena. Let me read that again. 449-page, 10-month report is chock full of strategic plans, project summaries, data tables, charts, descriptions of biological field effects, physical characteristics, methods of detection, theoretical capabilities, witness interviews, photographs, and case synopses explicitly about unexplained aerial phenomena.
UFOs.
444 pages. Throughout the report, the sponsors mentioned, however, the DIA is never explicitly named. The first pages list the names of every contractor working for BASS with appropriate security clearances to have access to the program. Amongst dozens of credential names, some of those listed are very familiar to the UFO community, including Puthoff, Davis, Jacques Vallée, and Combe Kelleher. Regardless of one's existing opinions of the UFO phenomenon, the sheer volume of content on the BASS 10-month report is astounding. For the record, I do not recognize any of these names.
Yeah.
Bob Lazar is the only UFO name that I know.
Yeah, and I don't know about him. I'm back and forth about him.
You are back and forth about Bob. One thing that people do say is that he is not crazy.
Yeah.
That is one report we get from people that know him from and also his comings and goings from the place that he said he worked at have been verified.
Yeah, there's a documentary about him that shows him
it's a pretty good one.
A real human, flawed character, kind of thing. And
it was very recent on Netflix.
Right, and so it's like it's I don't know what to think about him.
Yeah.
So this
but it's interesting they didn't.
This is way more interesting because you can go and you can find the pilots and the commanding officer of the various pilots, and see an interview with him where he goes into extreme detail with exactly what he saw with his eyes, not just instrumentation, but looking out of his cockpit as he's approaching the UFO and seeing it do crazy shit that's just not possible according to our version of physics.
Well, at least Jacques Vallée is a professor at Penn State College of Medicine, Department of Religious Studies, University of Pennsylvania. Some very well vetted professor.
Yeah.
And Colm Keller is somebody who worked at Bigelow Aerospace.
Okay.
Still works there.
Yep.
So yeah, don't know these guys, but apparently UFO community does know them. Some of the notable content of the 2009 BASS 10-month report includes overview of the BASS Physics Division effort to conduct research on advanced aerospace vehicles, including the development of standardization for measurement of physical effects and signatures associated with UAP. Overview of BASS research for measuring and gleaning the effects on biological organisms from UAP. Mention of Skinwalker Ranch in Utah as a possible laboratory for studying other intelligences and possible interdimensional phenomena. Strategic plans to organize a series of intellectual debate forums targeted to broad audience pertaining to the potential disclosure of an extraterrestrial presence. Plans to create a medical physiological UAP effects program. Requests for Project Blue Book files that have not been made public. Mentions of BASS program dubbed Project Northern Tier, which involves securing documents related to instances where dozens of UFOs flew over restricted airspace of facilities housing restricted airspaces of facilities housing nuclear weapons. So dozens of UFOs, documents. Yeah, okay. Project Northern Tier, which involves securing documents related to instances where dozens of UFOs flew over restricted airspaces of facilities housing nuclear weapons. A possible UAP landing reported to the BAS by the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, and its STAR team, Rapid Response Field Investigation funded by BAS in March 2009. Project databases of UAP's related materials compiled through various partnerships, and the intent to expand these databases by coordinating with foreign governments. Summaries of multiple UAP events, both inside the U.S. and in foreign countries. Photographs of UAPs provided by various sources, including foreign governments.
And here it's showing on the screen, there's a little chart of... it says chart 53.
It's actually a picture of the report page, so it's
right. Yeah, no, it's a picture of one of the report pages, right? And it's sightings around sightings within 300 miles of NT base. And so chart 53 indicates the percentage of total UAP events reviewed for this report, 1st of July through 30th of November 1975, which took place within 300 miles from the NT location. So these are... I'm pretty sure that's the
Northern Tier.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you've got like Maelstrom is 61 sightings, Minnow 25, Wirtsmith 44, Loring 37. So you're talking about just within 1 year back in 1975, the number of reports were huge around these nuclear sites. Go ahead and continue forward.
And not just that, but it seems like they had 4 different types of vehicle types
Why is it? Why you say that?
Are the what are these?
That's no. I think
Those are just locations.
Those are
What
just
is happening?
locations. I think. I mean, I don't know. We'd have to have more of that page, but
A&T bases. Yeah, you're right.
yeah, those are just bases, right? Okay, so continue.
Gotcha. Cool. From cover to cover, the Bass report references the government's new buzzword for UFOs, UAP. However, nowhere could Popular Mechanics find a single reference to foreign terrestrial advanced aerospace weapon systems or projected technological innovations based on current industry trends.
So in other words, it's not at all, even slightly, doing the faintest thing according to what Go.
It was a step what Go said it's supposed to do.
Right.
Sources tell Popular Mechanics the Bass 10-month report was only a sample of the materials the organization provided to the DIA. Monthly reports were being sent to the Pentagon in addition to annual program updates that were all about UAP or anomalous phenomena, says one former contractor. Chris Bartell, a security officer and investigator for Bass, later Bigelow Aerospace, from 2010 to 2018, confirms the accounts of former Bass and ATIP employees with Popular Mechanics. He says he did encounter some fairly dramatic paranormal events while working at the Skinwalker Ranch, and says he'd also heard mumblings of Bass being interested in studying paranormal activity in hopes it could lead to technology research. However, Bartell says he didn't know anything about AWSAP or ATIP until last fall. I was a bit taken aback, to say the least, he says.
This looks like another. There's another page out of the report. Looks like viewing a brightly glowing orange football field-sized disc that illuminated the missile site. The SAT team was ordered by the launch control people to proceed to the K7 site. However, they responded that they refused to go any further, clearly fearful of the intimidating appearance of the object. It began to rise. At about 1,000 feet, NORAD picked up the UFO on radar. 2 F-106 jet interceptors were launched from Great Falls, Montana, and headed toward the K7 area. The UFO continued to rise. At about 200,000 feet, it disappeared from NORAD's radar. The F-106s were never able to get a visual sighting of the UFO. All members of the SAT team were directed to the base hospital where they were psychologically tested. It was determined that no one could identify the object that was seen, but the members of the SAT team obviously had been through a traumatic experience. Meanwhile, targeted teams, along with computer specialists, were brought to the missile site to check out the missile, and specifically the computer in the warhead that targets the missile. And the computer that targets the missile. So in other words, the targeting part of the
Meanwhile,
missile.
targeting teams along with computer specialists were brought to the missile site to check out the missile and specifically the computer in the warhead that targets the missile.
Right.
Of the what?
No. It's the targeting part of the missile. It's worded a little strange.
Okay.
Amazingly, when the computer was checked, they found that the tape had mysteriously changed target numbers. The re-entry vehicle was then taken from the silo and brought back to the base. Eventually, the entire missile was changed.
So I don't understand.
So what happened is there was a UFO landed at a missile site. It takes off directly into space, even though they scramble F-106s.
Oh, and then they check the computer.
Then they checked the computer, and it had changed. The targeting for the missile had been changed.
Eventually, the entire missile was changed? What does that mean?
They probably changed out the missile because they didn't.
They didn't trust it.
They didn't trust it. It had been altered, and so they weren't going to, keep that as a viable missile. So continue forward.
And of course, at the top it says this information is proprietary and cannot be disseminated or used without prior written consent from the operating manager at Bass. I guess they got that. I guess they got permission from Bass.
No, they didn't get permission. The way that they got this, you'll end up finding out,
cool.
is they weren't supposed to even get.
They weren't supposed to get the 10-month report.
No, and they're not giving out who it is that gave them this information because I think it's technically
whistleblower,
extremely illegal.
Okay, good, because that's what it's. I was like, it cannot possibly be this illegal because it's seemingly awfully illegal.
Yeah.
Clearly, they must have gotten permission. Oh, oops, no, they
They
didn't.
but
journalists are protected.
But there's certain things that are legal, like because they went through these certain loopholes to make sure that they could not be this information would not get disseminated or released by the Freedom of Information Act. That made it where it was not, certain parts are not classified at all. And because of that, that's why Luis Elizondo was able to give out certain pieces of information and not others. Because of the trickery that they were trying to pull to make sure that you couldn't get the information if you requested it, he's still within his legal rights to release it because it was not technically
part of the thing
classified. It just wasn't released And so and that's how he says he constantly says, there's certain information I absolutely will not give and never intend to, and I have not done anything illegal. And so he's working specifically within legal bounds.
All right.
But like this information, this BAAS stuff, this did not come from Luis Elizondo,
No.
for instance. That would have probably.
I assumed it came from Bigelow.
That would have been very because
I mean
it's
they
illegal
credit
for
it.
Bigelow as well.
They keep crediting it as Bigelow Airspace, so
That's just what it says on the report. That's
well,
literally
I mean,
they have
that is
physical.
literally the credit. Like it literally belongs to Bigelow Airspace, but
Right.
the fact that they keep mentioning it kind of gave me this feeling like surely they've gotten permission.
No.
All right, fun. Though unaware of any formal contract with the DIA, Bartel confirms that reports generated about paranormal events on the ranch were being faxed to both Bigelow and the Pentagon on a regular basis. I would hate to think my experiences up there were somehow manipulated by outside man-made forces, Bartel says. I truly believe the ranch to be hollowed native land. All right, so there's our confirmation.
Hallowed native land. Yeah.
It is native land, yeah. Because Skinwalker is something that is a myth or something that the natives
Yeah, it's
believe
like
in.
basically like werewolves for Native Americans or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So just shapeshifters.
Yeah.
What was that show called? Taken, where they had the whole goal, the kind of the point that they illustrated in the show is that aliens are kidnapping humans to breed them with their own kind to have half human, half alien, and then releasing them back into the wild. Was that Taken or some other show?
I think that's been a common thread of because that's in part of the whole UFO thing.
That they're already among us, kind of thing.
Right. And
Skinwalkers.
Actually, there's a number of things that indicate that may be what's going on. Because not the breeding part. That I'm talking about that they're already that
you're an alien.
Shh. No, I'm not here.
Some have suggested that paranormal events associated with Skinwalker Ranch or AWSAP could be associated with secret and highly advanced weapons testing. While Bartel says it's possible weapons were being tested, nothing he observed was consistent with his experience of top-secret testing. Puthoff also says he saw no evidence that Bass was involved in weapons testing during his tenure with the organization. A statement I'm certain Mr. Bigelow would support, he says. Bigelow could not be reached for comment. Ah, shit. They do not have permission. Part 4, the secrets. The revelations in the Bass report beg the question. Why is the government now insistent it never studied UFOs? And why aren't those documents being discussed or made available through Freedom of Information Act requests? Individuals who worked on the ATIP program say the current uncertainty and confusion was by design and involved a dizzying shell game that's entirely consistent with how black budget intelligence programs are run. Quote, what you're dealing with is the very core of government secrecy and how things they absolutely don't ever want to discuss are kept hidden away, end quote. One former ATIP contractor tells Popular Mechanics. Sources say the key to understanding current denials of UFO studies in ATIP comes from a phrase stamped on each page of Bass' 10-month report obtained by Popular Mechanics. This information is proprietary and cannot be disseminated or used without prior written consent from the operating manager of Bass. Yes, it is stamped on every page. I saw it. According to several former ATIP contractors, the product being produced for the DIA was technical reports on exotic and potentially game-changing aerospace technologies, and the manner of determining what areas these radical airborne breakthroughs might emerge was through the research of UFOs. In exchange, not only did the DIA get the agreed-upon technical reports, but it would also gain access to the extensive research Bass was gathering on UFOs. While the DIA had access to volumes of UFO data, the materials were actually commercial property of Bass, a subsidiary of Bigelow Airspace. The idea of using an airspace research project as a cover for a secret UFO program may seem unscrupulous. But this all rings very familiar, Neil Gordon, an investigator of the Project of Government Oversight, tells Popular Mechanics. Gordon, whose area of expertise is in federal contract misconduct, contractor accountability, and government privatization, great field, says running the Commercial in Confidence program through ATIP is consistent with how the DoD deals with programs it wants to keep secret. Whether it's right or wrong is another story, Gordon says. But everything sounds very common for how black budget programs run. The DIA may have had extensive access to the UFO materials, but because all of the data technically belongs to Bass, under the Economic Espionage Act of 1996, disclosing or releasing proprietary materials provided to the government in confidence is a federal crime.
There you go.
Essentially.
Federal crime.
So it's not just that it's a private contractor. It's a relationship of a private contractor working with the government, giving them materials.
Right.
Is under the Economic Espionage Act of 96. That is a federal crime.
Right. So therefore, if you in this way, they are able to protect it with a federal sentence, while avoiding releasing it under FOIA. So it's a neat little shell game trick. It's like they won't you won't get it under FOIA because it doesn't qualify.
And if the contractor releases it themselves,
they'll go to fuck me in the ass, pound me in the ass, federal prison.
Well, that's why Bigelow couldn't be reached for comment. He doesn't want to go to federal pound me in the ass prison.
Exactly.
That's entirely why he may have released it, but is not telling people he's the one who released it.
No, that might be. I probably. Hey, if I was him, I fucking wouldn't.
He said, "I don't give a damn" earlier. Yeah. I mean, it's consistent with his character.
I know, but the fact that it could get back to you and they would put you under the fucking jail.
Yeah, no, under the jail. Yeah,
no, that would be stupid. I don't think he's that stupid.
No, he stayed around for long enough therefore he's probably not that stupid.
No.
Essentially, the DIA's UFO program was set up to circumvent FOIA requests and avoid having to discuss UFOs publicly. Out of concern for providing Popular Mechanics access to the 2009 BAS 10-month report, the person who made these materials available did so only under the guarantee of anonymity. It's worth noting this person is not a current government employee, nor were they involved with BAS or the AAWSAP contract. Okay. Sure, they weren't. Unfortunately, the government attempting to evade FOIA by contracting out its responsibilities is nothing new. Josh Burnday, an attorney who specializes in FOIA and First Amendment cases, tells Popular Mechanics. Both federal and state Freedom of Information Act statutes strive to eliminate such obvious gamesmanship, avoiding transparency and disclosure obligations by contracting out functions. But whether they are successful in doing so is an entirely different story. Davis, the astrophysicist and former AWACP contractor, and one of the names mentioned as UFO information persons, says his work on the ATIP program was entirely consistent with all of the technological intelligence programs he'd previously worked on over the last 30-plus years. Quote, indeed, science is applied, but right now there's not enough data on UAP to make examining it a scientific endeavor. It's an intelligence issue, not a scientific endeavor, he says. Puthoff, meanwhile, says Bass produced stacks of materials to the ceiling. But because of the way things were done, he was surprised to hear any of it had become public. To be honest, I didn't think this stuff would ever see the light of day, he says. When reached for comment, Colm Keller, the former deputy director of BAS, said, I am unable to discuss this topic. Multiple other requests to Bigelow Airspace for comment went unanswered. The entire manner in which the DIA partnership allegedly operates raises an important question. Could the reason for the Pentagon's recent denials of ATIP and AAWSAP conducting UFO research be the result of the current DoD administration being naive to the program's underlying and commercially secret hidden purpose? It seems like a plausible theory, if it wasn't for something else Popular Mechanics uncovered. I don't get the theory, but I guess it doesn't matter because it's not a plausible theory. But I don't understand what they're saying.
What they're saying is, do they not know? Are they so compartmentalized that they don't even know? And is that what's going on?
Oh, so is that? So the current Department of Defense administration is completely unaware of what the whole DIA point was. Because why would that? Oh, okay. Oh, they're trying to say that Susan Go, who's denying.
Right. Maybe she's denying it because she
just doesn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But next part
is
there's really no need to do all those transitions.
There is.
Go ahead.
Part 5, the admission. And that is a picture of a Pentagon with neat little flower loops they have all around it. Kind of cool. Last year, Stephen Aftergood of the Federation of American Scientists obtained the through Freedom of Information Act request and published a January 2018 letter that the DIA Congressional Relations Division sent to members of Congress. In the letter, the DIA provided a list of all products produced under the ATIP contract for the DIA to publish. The referenced list includes 38 technical papers called Defense Intelligence Reference Documents, DIRDs, which cover a range of advanced, exotic, and theoretical aerospace topics. Given what's been said about the commercially confidential nature of ATIP, the phrase for DIA to publish may be a critical play on words. Nevertheless, a source with access to the materials provided Popular Mechanics with a copy of previously unreleased technical papers listed as one of ATIP's products. And you can read the entire study by going to the article. While the DIA refers to the paper as Field Effects on Biological Tissue, the original title for the submitted paper appears to actually have been Clinical, Medical, Acute, and Subacute Field Effects on Human, Dermal, and Neurological Tissues. Much more expansive.
Yep, yeah.
According to the study's introduction, Earth Tech International, that's what Hal Puthoff does. He founded Earth Tech International, and that's what's on this thing. According to the study's introduction, the paper is an examination of, quote, clinical medical signs and symptoms and biophysics of injury known and expected from near-field, mostly ultra-high NIEMR microwave thermal from unintended exposure to anomalous systems, end quote. Microwave thermal from unintended exposure to anomalous systems. Sound like UFOs to me.
Look at that symbol. That is not a normal Asclepius.
That's an alien Asclepius.
Wait, Caduceus?
No, it's a Caduceus.
Yeah, it's not definitely not
an
not
alien
an
Caduceus
with a moon on the top.
It is a moon instead of a snake. I'm looking at this. Is this
some
normal?
eyes looking things?
Yeah.
No, that is not normal.
Yeah, the eyes and
none of that is normal.
Well, the moon makes me think of the Muslim symbol.
Yeah.
Which I'm always curious why they use the moon or the crescent. In light of the cumbersome clinical language, just a cursory scan reveals. It's a 53-page report that you can read in its entirety. In light of the cumbersome clinical language, just a cursory scan reveals the entire focus was on examining injuries that may have occurred after contact with UFOs or UAPs. In fact, the very term UFO appears 16 times in the report. The word anomalous is used 27 times, most often with the word aircraft, aviation, or airspace immediately following. And the phrase Advanced Aerospace Systems Application Program is mentioned in bold on both occasions.
Okay, so let's review what has just occurred here.
Advanced Aerospace Systems Application Program is just one W away from being AAWSAP.
Yeah. So the point is that this was this is listed as one of the products produced for ATIP
for DIA to publish.
And it was sent to Congress. So that's how it was kind of like.
That's how they got around the whole.
Well, no, this is like I think kind of an accidental admission. In other words, sending it through non-secure. In other words, there is a non-secure source that is not like classified, where you can track down that this is a paper that was published for this, which is all about UFOs. So therefore, the Pentagon saying it's not about UFOs is proven to be false.
Yes.
Okay, continue forward.
Popular Mechanics spoke with the study's author, Christopher Kit Green, a forensic clinician and neuroscientist. Green was surprised to learn his research paper had become publicly known, because he was under the impression it was never included in the distributed set, nor was it finally peer-reviewed. Green confirms his paper wasn't cited correctly in the letter to Congress. However, he says the 54-page document Popular Mechanics obtained appeared to be the same paper he was requested to provide as product of AAWSAP. This focused on forensically assessing accounts of injuries that could have resulted from claimed encounters with the UAP, says Green. I didn't work for BAS, other than as a contractor for my paper, and I wasn't part of AAWSAP. However, it is my understanding this program was a UFO study that outwardly was not supposed to look like it had anything to do with UFOs.
Says the author of the paper.
Yeah. Green cautions some past speculations about his paper were inaccurate, including the claims it was an effort to understand and reverse engineer UAP technology. Green also stressed that while his work focused on encounters with unknown or unidentified aerial objects, all of the injuries he assessed could be accounted for by known terrestrial means, and did not provide any evidence for extraterrestrial or non-human technologies. Could the 38 technical reports BAS produced for ATIP represent what it did? Could the 38 technical reports BAS produced for ATIP represent what it determined accounted for UAP? Many of the topics, and this is another quote, many of the topics could be called dual use, given that, say, papers on advanced plasma propulsion and invisibility cloaking could apply to our own advanced airspace development as well as possibly some UAPs, says Puthoff. But his space-time metric engineering paper, the warp drive and wormhole papers, and specifically the statistical Drake equation paper, are essentially applicable only to UAPs, end quote. There's a neat little timeline for those that are available to watch visually, can follow along. For those that cannot, who are listening to this, I will narrate. It is a timeline of UFO programs, infographic. Robert Bigelow establishes the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, NIDS. 1999, 4 years later, Bigelow establishes Bigelow Airspace. 2004, Bigelow disbands NIDS. Summer 2007, a scientist from the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, visits Bigelow's Skinwalker Ranch and expresses a desire and need for research into paranormal and/or UFO activities. October 2007, Bigelow establishes International Space Hardware Services, a subsidiary of Bigelow Airspace. January 2008, Bigelow establishes Bigelow Airspace Advanced Space Studies, BAS, a subsidiary of International Space Hardware Services. July 2008, Senator Henry Reid establishes funding for the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, AAWSAP. So that's the difference. Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program versus the Advanced Aerospace System Applications Program that was quoted in the medical report. So the W stood for weapons. The AAW, August 2008. So July 2008, Senator Reid establishes funding for AAWSAP. August 2008, the AAWSAP solicits bids. September 2008, as the sole bidder, BAS wins the AAWSAP contract. Late 2008, Luis Elizondo joins the AAWSAP. The Advanced Airspace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, a more government-focused effort, begins. June 2009, Reid applies for Special Access Program, SAP, status for ATIP, but is denied. July 2009, BAS delivers 26 Defense Intelligence Reference documents and completes a 10-month report. The DIA renews AAWSAP at $12 million for 12 more Intelligence Defense Reference documents. BAS delivers the last 12 Defense Intelligence Reference documents, and the DIA decides not to renew the AAWSAP contract. September 2010, BAS effectively disbands. ATIP is bootstrapped and moved to the Office of the Secretary of Defense under Elizondo. October 3rd, 2017, a memo is drafted, handing over the ATIP responsibility from Elizondo to another Department of Defense employee. October 4th, 2017, Elizondo leaves the DoD to join to the STARS Academy of Arts and Sciences. And I believe they have the first video.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the people who released the videos, and that's
official UAP footage from 2004.
To the Stars Academy is also Hal Putoff's.
I see. So Hal and Elizondo, who was in charge of this program before Susan Go, joins the Stars.
I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, that was my understanding before.
Davis, who worked with Putoff and authored 4 of the DIRDs, the Defense Information Research Documents, offers a particularly intriguing detail about the DIA's 38 reference papers. Quote, "This wasn't focused on whether or not UAPs are real. It's already been well established that UAPs are real by a preponderance of evidence." I don't know what that word means.
A preponderance of evidence means there's just a fuck ton of evidence.
Oh, preponderance, cool.
And when you're in that area and in the know, that it's just ridiculous. You know, once you've got that level of evidence, you're not questioning whether or not it's real. You're questioning details about it.
The quality or fact of being greater in number, quantity, or importance.
Yeah.
Strange use. I don't know. It just feels weird to me.
Yeah. I was not giving you the definition for the word. I see you may have misunderstood.
Yeah, I've literally but I just like, what does that word mean? You gave me a context definition. Some classified and some proprietary that I can't talk about, he says. Instead of investigating if UAPs are real, the 38 technical papers for the AAWSAP contract were also an intelligence assessment to measure just how far advanced UAPs could be from current and projected scientific understandings. Me, Hal Putoff, and an airspace executive who had access to materials worked on that assessment for the DIA, Davis says. Ultimately, aside from the wealth of vast proprietary evidence, Green's study alone, which the DIA told Congress was a product of ATIP that it would be happy to provide upon direct request, seems to completely dispute the Pentagon's recent claims that neither ATIP or AWSAP were related to UFOs. In an exchange of emails between Go, the Pentagon spokesperson, and a Swedish researcher, Roger Glassal, which were provided and published by research analyst Keith Basterfield. That's an unfortunate name. Go said AWSAP commenced in the fiscal year 2008 with a designated $10 million of funding. Since the bid solicitation wasn't issued until August 2008, we now know that Go is mistaken, and the program actually began in fiscal year 2009, which began October 1st, 2008.
Seems like irrelevant details they didn't need to include.
Seems, but also to add to the fact that she's a misinformation agent.
Yes.
In the same email exchange, Go indicate the first 26 technical reports were... So either she's completely retarded or a misinformation agent.
Yes.
Take a pick.
Or both.
Or both. In the same email exchange... Or they picked her because as an information agent because...
Let's say, wait a minute. She says a lot of conflicting shit. We're going to have her to report everything.
Yes. In the same email exchange, Go indicated the first 26 technical reports were completed in late 2009, and an additional $12 million was designated in the fiscal year 2010 Defense Appropriation Act for 12 additional reports. Editor's note, in the original email, Go indicated late 2008. It's assumed this was also set in error since Bass didn't receive the ASAP contract until September 2008, and Green's technical paper is dated May 2009. From Go. After an OSD/DIA review in late 2009, it was determined the reports were of limited value to DIA, and there was a recommendation that upon completion of the contract, the project should be transisted to an agency or component better suited to oversee it. Funding for the program at the DIA ended in 2012, and DoD elected not to continue the program after the work contracted under the fiscal year 2010 and DAA was completed.
So that's another quote from Go.
But they said earlier they said in her original email, she said late 2008. But here it says late 2009 in the actual quote. So did they mistake it, or did she write two emails and say 2008, then 2009, then 2012? What is happening?
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? Who cares? Whatever. Indeed. Every source Popular Mechanics spoke to for this story agrees that the partnership between Bass and AWSAP was concluded by 2012. But here's where things get messy. Here's where things get messy. Go says when DIA funding dried up in 2012, the overarching ATIP program closed up shop as well. Every source we spoke to, however, says not only did ATIP not end in 2012, but the program's still ongoing to this day. Core to the contention of whether or not the government maintained an interest after 2012 is the man the DoD says had no responsibilities with AWSAP or ATIP, former senior Pentagon intelligence executive Luis Elizondo. Who exactly is Elizondo? A patriotic whistleblower putting his reputation at stake for something he says the American public must know? Or a huckster using his former position for his own benefit, as the Pentagon seemingly implies? There's a picture of Elizondo.
It may be
Luis, probably is. Luis Elizondo in South Korea in 1996 with looks like a military badge, and my God, his outfit's South Korean. Holy shit. Something, I was like, if you just put an Asian face there, it's so that. And Elizondo in Kandahar in late 2001 in military fatigues. So I don't know what he did in South Korea in 96, but he looks to have a military police badge at his waist.
Yeah.
Part 6, the leader. After serving a stint as a counterintelligence agent for the U.S. Army in the late 90s, Elizondo would be recruited. That's what he was doing in South Korea, being a counterintelligence agent.
Yes.
Elizondo would be recruited into ranks of the enigmatic U.S. intelligence community. Elizondo's first stop as an intelligence operations specialist was running counterinsurgency and counter-narcotics operations in Latin America. We dealt with a lot of stuff like coup d'etats, black market terrorism, violent drug cartels, all that kind of stuff, Elizondo says. Following the attacks of September 11, 2001, Elizondo was then redirected toward East Asia, where he served as an advisor of a small intelligence unit assigned to support General James Mattis during his command of Marine Expeditionary Unit Task Force in the war on terrorism. In East Asia? We were fighting 9/11 in East Asia?
Okay, continue
What
forward.
the fuck?
Continue forward.
In a case study published by the Naval War College in 2006, Lieutenant Colonel Damian Spooner described the analysis and products produced by intelligence sections under General Mattis as being indispensable in driving the TF-58 planning and operations, the Extraditionary Unit Task Force 58. Later, while continuing to support the U.S.-led war on terrorism, Elizondo, the son of a Cuban exile, found himself in Cuba dealing with some of the most dangerous terrorists in the world at Guantanamo Bay's infamous Camp 7, the prison constructed for the sole purpose of housing 14 high-value detainees. In early 2008, James Clapper, then Deputy Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, asked Elizondo to come to the Pentagon to help coordinate information sharing and partnerships engagement being run by the Secretary of Defense's office. Though the promise of cutting his daily commute in half was one of the biggest selling points, Elizondo's decision to set up shop at the Pentagon would end up putting him directly in the path of recruitment for a special program DAA has just started running, AAWSAP. Though the Bass 10-month report includes an abundance of UAP information, nothing within the text contains any data or information provided by the U.S. government. Conversely, there are a number of requests made by Bass for access to specific UAP information being held within the DoD and other U.S. agencies. So it looks like they were just taking information and not giving any from Bass. Sources say this is key to understanding how Elizondo entered the picture. If they, Bass, wanted access to info that I'm not saying does exist, but it might have been highly classified, you need someone who has the tickets to make sure the contractors weren't actually looking at space access program stuff thinking it was UFOs, said an intelligence official who was not authorized to speak on the record. Plus, the official tells Popular Mechanics, I'm not saying it was, but they might have been looking to something that was of significant interest to foreign advisories and a high-value target for espionage. Bottom line, you need a counterintel guy. So their worry, it seems to me, the worry was that when establishing a contractor program such as the BASS. So once you establish BASS and you're telling them to go look at information that they're supposed to give you, the first step of defense is to limit them from getting any of your information. So that makes sense why the government wouldn't give BASS any information they had on aliens, but only took information from them. But an even more paranoid mind, but it says it right here. If Bass, so right here.
If they wanted access to info that I'm not saying does exist.
Yeah, hold on a second. There. Though the Bass 10-month report includes abundance of UAP information, nothing within that text came from the U.S. government. Conversely, there are a number of requests made by Bass to access the government's information. So government has information that they're withholding from Bass, even though they're one of the contractors, the one and only contractor for UAPs, and they're still not giving them the information that they have. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but they're also worried that there's going to be other governments but because it is requesting information and assuming the government will give them some information, if they do give them that information, you need to have somebody who is making sure that foreign governments aren't going through this private contractor to get the U.S. government secrets. That's why you need a counterintelligence guy.
I suppose.
Is what they're saying.
If Bass wanted access to that info, and I'm not saying it does exist, but it might have been highly classified, you need someone who had the tickets to make sure the contractors weren't actually looking at SAP.
Actually classified stuff.
Right. Stuff thinking it was UFOs.
Right.
So this says intelligence official who was not authorized to speak on the record. Plus, the official tells Popular Mechanics, not going to say it was, but they might have been looking into something that was of significant interest to foreign advisories and a high-value target for espionage.
High-value target for espionage. So you need somebody who
watching over the whole program, period,
yeah.
to make sure that information that isn't actual
sensitive,
actual advanced aerospace information that the government has
that you
classified.
don't have a weak gate through this contracting.
So you have to have counterintelligence guy. Okay, Continue forward.
Elizondo tells Popular Mechanics that two guys came. Elizondo tells Popular Mechanics that he never wanted to be part of ATIP. However, as a senior official at OUSDI with a background in counterintelligence, he found himself being recruited into the ongoing UFO effort. In 2008, Elizondo says, two guys came by my office and said, "Are you Lou Elizondo?" The first thing I thought was, oh no, what'd I do? They told me, you came highly recommended as a former senior CI guy with some background in advanced avionics, which is true. I worked some on the Open Skies Treaty. I worked with Raytheon, Boeing, and some other stuff. That was my portfolio. Elizondo was told ATIP needed a counterintelligence support and security guy for a very special program. Within a month, after a series of meetings, Elizondo finally met with the then director of ATIP, who asked him what seemed like a strange question at the time. What do you think about UFOs? Elizondo was flummoxed. I was like, what the hell? I thought it was a test or something. So I told the truth. I don't think about UFOs. I don't know if they're real or not. I don't think about them. I'm too busy trying to catch terrorists and bad guys. What a great answer. Elizondo's ambivalence was exactly what those guys running the program wanted to hear. Soon enough, Elizondo joined ATIP. Seriously, for a while, I still didn't know if it was a test, he says. It wasn't until I started examining the security posture of the portfolio that I suddenly realized these things are really unidentified.
And now that's important. What he's saying is what the government information that he is looking at about UFOs is, he's saying that what he was looking at is actually unidentified, not simply classified, which he does have the clearance to look at.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And not foreign.
Not foreign.
Not classified. Unidentified. Right. Not long after. Well,
I mean, it's not proven to be not foreign, but at least
right. It's not. They don't think it's foreign anyway. Yeah, that's not the language
right.
surrounding it.
The point is that it's actually unidentified.
Actually unidentified. Could be foreign. Could be something else. But yeah, good point.
Something that we have no knowledge of.
Yes. Not long after Elizondo was on board in June 2009, Senator Harry Reid submitted a letter to then Deputy Secretary of Defense William Lynn III requesting ATIP be granted restricted SAP status, Special Something Program. Though ultimately denied, had Reid's request been granted, it would have further tightened security and secrecy around ATIP. Last year, CLAS Las Vegas reporter George Knapp published Reid's letter, showing Elizondo's name on the list of preliminary government personnel who would have access to ATIP. Who have had access to ATIP. In addition to Elizondo, Reid, and the late Senator Daniel Inouye, 7 other names of government employees which have not been released would have had access to the proposed ATIP SAP. Notably, only 3 contractor personnel made the cut. According to a source with knowledge of the letter, the 3 contractors personnel Reid wanted to grant preliminary access to were Bigelow, Keller, and Putoff. And Keller here was the Vice President and Chief Scientist, Environmental Control and Life Support Systems at Bigelow Airspace currently, at Henderson, Nevada. Okay. So he still works for Bigelow. The Pentagon later confirms the letter published by Knapp was authentic. Sources say the limited number of contractors listed with access is yet another breadcrumb left on the trail of secrecy showing ATIP was indeed slightly different from the AAWSA contract. According to multiple sources, including individuals working within the Pentagon and confirmed by Elizondo in 2010 when the DIA cut off funding for ATIP's contractor, a DIA program manager... in 2010, when the DIA cut off funding for ATIP's contract, a DIA program manager asked Elizondo if he would keep the UFO project running. I wasn't a DIA employee, Elizondo says, so I'd have to run it wearing my OSD hat at the Pentagon. We all agreed that this was the best thing to do, so that's what we did. Explains why I was still going for 2 years after they didn't have funding, because it was slightly different. Because they said it was disbanded. Right. Well, they said it was disbanded in 2012.
But this is the way they do things.
Yeah. By all accounts, Elizondo was now bootstrapping ATIP from the OUSDI, meaning he added the program to the list of his existing intelligence portfolios. Popular Mechanics has learned that post-BAS era of ATIP was an even more closely guarded program and consistent with how highly classified intelligence projects are conducted. 90% of the people don't understand how the general government runs and even less understand the intelligence community, end quote, a former senior special operations and intelligence officer tells Popular Mechanics. Continuing the quote, because this program would have now been out of the front office, your guy Elizondo would have had the ability to muster up people from various areas of the intelligence community. You would have wanted to include the least possible, the best possible, for the specific mission. You could have had people from the DIA, ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, and OSI, Office of Special Investigations, all working separately but together on the same mission. Elizondo says that when he took over the ATIP, he ran it like a traditional government effort. Quote, we greatly reduced the number of contractors to just what we might have needed, but this was going to be government to government, looking on government systems at government data, he says. According to Elizondo, unlike most of the BAS personnel, the post-2012 ATIP crew did have access to highly classified government information to adequately access the situation. So yeah, because unlike BAS personnel, post-2012 ATIP crew did have access.
Right.
While the Pentagon denies that ATIP continued after 2012, Elizondo says that post-BAS ATIP was not unsanctioned and not just a group of government UFO enthusiasts. Quote, very, very few people in the building knew what we were doing, but the front office of the Secretary of Defense, was in the loop, he says. Popular Mechanics has learned that the Oval of Nephis intelligence was one of the major backers that wanted to see ATIP continued, which sources say is why the Navy has been so willing to take the most public lead on the UAP issue today. And it was their video, the 2004.
Right.
Elizondo's critics have repeatedly asked an important question. If ATIP was such a secret program, why is Elizondo now talking about it publicly? By denying ATIP SAP status back in 2009 and not ever officially blanketing it under a security classification, Popular Mechanics has learned that the government effectively allowed for the program itself to now be discussed. Quote, there's a lot of they can't talk about, like sources, methods, etc., but the program itself is unclassified and fair game for public discourse. A source with knowledge of the program tells Popular Mechanics. Elizondo confirms that this is correct. I have never once violated, nor am I willing to violate my security oath, so anything I've discussed is indeed unclassified, he says. In one of Elizondo's employees' performance evaluations, which Popular Mechanics obtained, it lists his primary mission goals as managing and administering information, access control, and security of national-level SAP for the Secretary of Defense. Elizondo confirms his position allowed him to access the most highly secretive and reclusive programs being run by the U.S. The stuff we were seeing was truly unidentified. It wasn't related to anything we were doing, he says. In October 2017, Elizondo resigned from the DoD to join former Blink-182 frontman Tom DeLonghi's UFO research group to the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. That's why I know that name. Which would soon release the Navy's FLIR 1 video to the world and properly kick off a ufological renaissance. Elizondo now works as the company's Director of Global Security and Special Programs. Why did Elizondo leave his government job? Because he realized the Pentagon's top brass would never treat UAP with the importance they deserved. A senior Pentagon official tells Popular Mechanics they were aware that Elizondo briefed a White House intelligence aide and two senior aides to Mattis, then as Secretary of Defense, in the spring of 2017. The official, who is not authorized to speak on the record, says the White House aide was uncomfortable with the prospect of UFOs being real. To their knowledge, the White House aide did not pass the information along. The aides to Mattis, meanwhile, acknowledged UFOs were a real issue, but they were concerned with the political optics should it ever come out that the Secretary of Defense had been briefed about them. Elizondo confirms the accuracy of those accounts. I resigned only after multiple attempts to brief the Secretary of Defense failed, he previously told Popular Mechanics. Finally, while the Pentagon has denied ATIP's existence after 2012 and that Elizondo was ever involved in looking at UFOs, Popular Mechanics has obtained documentation that seems to unambiguously show ATIP was active after the closing of the BAS AWSAP contract. Elizondo was running this extension of ATIP, and the efforts to examine UFOs are still currently underway. And here's the document. Per SECDEF's front office guidance to you and me, it took the liberty of drafting a memo, redacted, that helps you better assume the new responsibilities for ATIP. At your convenience, please review. It's very short on purpose, and let me know if you want me to put more meat on it. Something, 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 something. Make sure you answer the email. So they're essentially connecting the front office with ATIP. Mm-hmm. So the secretary, the defense, fucking whatever they call the front office. Office of the Secretary of Defense. Which is, I'm assuming, Department of Defense is headed by the Secretary of Defense. Or at least is, So, though the documents were unclassified, they contained sensitive information, and the person sharing them did so only under the guarantee that Popular Mechanics would not make them publicly available. The person said they only were willing to share the materials to support Elizondo's claims, which they say have been unfairly challenged over the last 2 years. The individual, who is not a government employee, did approve the release of a small section from one of the documents showing the changing of responsibilities before Elizondo left the DoD. These are it's a picture of F-35Bs that are taken off in flight, and damn, that's a sexy bird. All right. Part 7, The Unknown. I believe it is the last part.
The final part.
Based on where the scroll wheel is. In June 2019, the office of Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia. VA? Virginia?
I think so.
Yeah, VT is Vermont. Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee's office confirmed that closed-door meetings on UAP have occurred. So, in June 2019, Officer of Senator Mark Warner, Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee's office, confirms that closed-door meetings on UAPs have occurred.
And that's what I'm talking about. The
strength.
Guy, the commander who actually eyewitnessed.
Dave Ferber?
Is that his name? Yeah, I think so.
Commander Dave.
Yeah, he's the one who eyewitnessed the Tic Tac UFO event, but he actually has friends who were part of the Go Fast and
Gimbal.
Yeah.
And those are the names for the UFOs.
This is the name of the various
code names
of the videos that have been released, and there's extremely interesting information about the videos that he actually gives that you don't find anywhere. Like for instance, with the gimbal, it's actually you only see one UFO on the display, but there's apparently 5 more, or maybe it was 4 more. I think it was maybe a total of 5 that are being picked up by radar, etc., that they're discussing. And so there's that that's happening, and of course some of the other things he describes. But let's continue forward with just the what we got right now.
You got it. More recently, last December, when asked by Conway Daily Sun reporter Damon Steer about the Navy UAP encounters, recent presidential candidate and current member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Senator Michael Bennet, he was a presidential candidate? Oh, for like 2 seconds. Yeah, there was like 80,000 Democratic people that tried to. Okay. Current member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Senator Michael Bennet, was cautious in saying he wouldn't share anything he'd learned on the Intelligence Committee. However, Bennet said, "Our guys are seeing stuff that's unidentified. They don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. We're trying to learn more about it. The Air Force is trying to learn more about it."
So there's once again.
Love that.
Right.
That we're in contact with the stuff.
Here we have people with extremely high clearance.
Extremely a lot to lose.
Counterintelligence. People saying it's not something we know what it is, period. And here's also, after they've been in security briefings, it's not something that we know what it is, and we're trying to figure it out.
And why would, and if they're, so you just mentioned intelligence, counterintelligence. So let's say this is some lie. So why would they lie that there are aliens? You know what I mean? Like, why would that be the kind of noise they would want to add to? Doesn't seem like that would be. Well, I
mean, there's a.
Well, I guess you could be hiding from. It's unidentified. We totally don't know what aliens. You know what I mean? Like there could be, because some people have claimed that there are multiple different alien groups that are fighting with each other, and that we're way more in contact with aliens.
Well, one of the things that is
that would be a disinformation
about the various military people, when the military people are talking to each other about the UFOs. Is that the UFOs do not all look the same. There are a couple of
the Tic Tac, gimbal, the triangles, the lights.
There's a number of different kinds of them, and so since you're stepping away from a moment, I'm gonna go ahead and I just mentioned that there's one of the things that was going on with the one that was seen during the Tic Tac event. Some of the things that you don't hear about was the guy who eyewitnessed it. I mean, you see the video, and in the video, you basically have the FLIR, which is the
FLIR one.
Yeah, which is
FLIR.
Basically, infrared reading of the which he was like from 2 miles out was the FLIR was taken. But this is a guy. He actually went and he was within half a mile, I guess, is what it was. And he said, "Now that's like when you're talking about in terms of a jet. That's like
it's very close.
That's right there. It's right in fucking front of you. It's a tiny distance, and basically the Tic Tac was roughly the size of a typical jet. And one of the things that I had not seen in any of the other reports of the Tic Tac was that there was a cross shape underwater that was dark. That the Tic Tac was basically popping wildly, completely without any acceleration time, just kind of moving across the water on top of this cross shape that was dark underneath the water. and just like zooming back and forth in weird ways. And then as he circled around down to intercept it because he wanted to get as close as he possibly
submarine
can.
Or what do you mean down?
It was down. It was down near the water.
Oh, I see.
And they were coming out. They
were in the air, but it was near
right.
water.
And so two jets.
Gotcha.
One up high. Him and his wingman. He told his wingman to stay up, and he then went down for a closer look. And when he got in really close, it started circling up to meet him. So like for instance, he was circling down, nice and slow because you don't want to end up in the water because all the water looks the same. And so you can accidentally get into unrecoverable position is one of the things he was talking about. But then the two of them started kind of circling each other. So he decided to go straight. He took a quick, hard turn to go across to get to the
cross shape.
To the Tic Tac, and then it was like when it was like really close range, it just disappeared for him. In other words, it apparently accelerated away instantaneously, or just fucking disappeared. Is what he he asked his wingman, who was viewing it from a much greater distance, and it's like it doesn't matter. He was talking about how like the SR-71, you at Mach 2.5 or whatever, it takes a long time for it to disappear visually, but
right.
This just fucking blinked out of existence for him. And so either it was accelerating away or just went invisible,
or it wasn't a craft at all, but the craft was underwater, the cross-shaped thing, and this was just some sort of thing it was projecting, some sort of thing it was doing, like a
Yeah, but except it was
either a drone or a probe,
except it would have to be picked up by. It was being picked up by infrared. This is the thing that was infrared.
Mm-hmm.
It picked up by
the circle thing.
The Tic Tac.
On the I don't know what that is. All I know is the Navy video.
Like you go
and the Navy video is just a circle, just a globe.
You're talking about the
2004 video.
Gimbal.
That's gimbal. Okay.
Right.
It's just a circle. Yeah.
Well, then there's also videos of
I haven't
the
seen
Tic Tac. The Tic Tac just like zooms off of the video really super fast.
I've never seen the Tic Tac videos.
Yeah. Okay. So the Tic Tac videos are different than the gimbal ones.
So people have seen the Tic Tac other places, or is it just this one event?
This is just one event with the Tic Tac. So
right.
This is 2004.
So why would you why would anyone think that it's anything other than a fucking phaser blast? You know what I mean? That the craft itself was the cross.
Because it's being
And what they picked up on the radar as the Tic Tac was some sort of fucking projectile.
Because it's being picked up by, but it was hovering in place for one thing.
Okay.
And then it was zooming back and forth over this weird large cross shape
well,
underwater.
But they still could have been.
And then it's the size of a jet. What you're saying makes no sense.
But they could have been controlling it from the actual craft that was underwater.
Whatever. Why does that? How does that have anything to do with what we're talking about? I don't understand.
That the real craft was underwater and maybe it disappeared because it was just energy. That's how it dissipated, because whoever's in the craft was like, oh, boop, make it go away.
Sure, whatever. The point is that all these other things go.
I'm not sure. What is the point even? Because why were you bringing up the whole cross shape at all? Why?
Because that's just what happened. I'm just relaying the information that you don't hear elsewhere about the Tic Tac event. Only the eyewitness account of Commander whatever his name is,
Dave.
That's the only place that you actually hear specifically about the thing underwater as well.
Do we have? So we have it on. So in other words, is Tic Tac a recorded thing? Or
yes.
Okay.
There's a FLIR video of it. That's the infrared.
But that's not the 2004 video.
The one that it is still also from 2004. That's the thing. The gimbal event and the Tic Tac event were during the same year. I'm relatively certain on two different coasts.
Well, we're talking about this video, the one that we've
shown.
We've seen this one.
There was a cruiser.
What video is this? Is this the Tic Tac?
I think that's the Tic Tac video.
Okay, that's the only video I've seen.
No, you've seen the gimbal as well.
Well, okay, this is the video I'm referring to as the Navy.
They look they're similar. They're FLIR. Right. They all
So they will look the same.
They will look the same.
Oh, okay. Because the screen will
very
be the same.
Similar. They'll look very similar.
Well, never mind. I might have seen both then.
Right, and not realize what you're looking at.
Yeah, because Okay, so but it seemed like you were saying that because of something that we read. So did I miss the point? Or was the point just like extra information that you can't see in the
you stepped away for a minute, so I was filling time with interesting information while you
already
stepped
started
away.
talking about it. before I stepped away?
No, I started talking about it as you stepped away. Go ahead.
Oh.
Continue forward.
Well, that explains it because I'm like, why are we talking about this? I'm missing the context
Because
connection.
I was eventually going to mention these interesting events that are going on. But that in the context, the context is we're talking about Luis Elizondo. We're talking about information.
Yeah, the last thing was that we don't know
Yeah.
anything about it. The Air Force is trying to learn more about it.
Right.
Okay. Popular Mechanics has since learned, in October 2019, staffers with the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and Senate Armed Service Committees were briefed on current UAP issues. According to people with knowledge of these briefings, some former BAS contractors and current ATIP leaders were in attendance. Insiders also say this past year, during a closed-door meeting with the Senate Intelligence Committee, Brigadier General Richard Stapp, director of the DoD's Special Access Program Central Office, testified to the mysterious objects being encountered by the military were not related to U.S. secret technology. The Pentagon did not respond to requests by Popular Mechanics to confirm Stapp's testimony before the Intelligence Committee. In only the second time publicly discussing this event, Popular Mechanics spoke with the Navy fighter pilot who was Commander David Ferver's wingman, which is the guy you just mentioned. He told his wingman to stay up while he himself went down.
And that's what was important, is that from two different perspectives, they both saw it just fucking disappear.
Gotcha. Captain David Ferver's wingman during the now famous 2004 Nimitz UFO encounter. Agreeing to talk only under the conditions of anonymity, the fighter pilot confirmed they testified in front of congressional leadership about their encounter. I've been requested repeatedly to go to the Pentagon and asked, is this what you saw? During a series of email exchanges, Popular Mechanics provided specific information to Go, the Pentagon spokesperson, in an effort to see if this might influence the DoD's current position. Initially, Go said she would examine the information and see if she could provide a statement in response. However, Go has not responded to repeated follow-up requests from Popular Mechanics. On its own, the evidence showing the Pentagon's interest in UFOs is unlikely to change the minds of many who are skeptical of the idea that mysterious, apparently intelligent, and possibly otherworldly objects might be buzzing around the skies above Earth. Quote, the whole contracting process for this program was irregular from start to finish. End quote. Stephen Aftergood, director of the Federation of American Scientists Project on Government Secrecy, tells Popular Mechanics. Quote, the AAWSAP contract sounds like it was a good deal for the contractor, but it would be hard to argue that either the military or the public got their money's worth. End quote. Meanwhile, William Kurth, an engineering professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, who authored 2 of the 38 technical papers provided in the AAWSAP contract, offers a different opinion. He says he was unaware of the UFO background of AAWSAP, but very familiar with BAS's UFO interest. Quote, I had some graduate students who worked for BAS during that time, and I know Bigelow has an interest in the topic, but no one mentioned anything about UFOs when they asked me to write the papers, end quote, Cuthbert says. Regardless of what the underlying motivation may have come from, Cuthbert says his work on the 2 papers, Detection and High-Resolution Tracking of Vehicle at Hypersonic Velocities and Aneutron Fusion Propulsion 2, led to his examination of new approaches to nuclear propulsion technology, which might not have been inspired otherwise. We are looking into these propulsion technologies today, and this area alone led to several of my students pursuing PhDs who I didn't think otherwise would have, Cuthbert says. With the wealth of data collected by BAS, and almost assuredly more information being gathered by the ATIP, it raises the question. Is the UAP issue being closely guarded because we don't believe it's real, or because we're afraid we can't understand it? Mick West, the author of Escaping the Rabbit Hole, How to Debunk Conspiracy Theories Using Fast Logic and Respect, suggests the public availability and confirmation of rigorous empirical studies by ATIP could change the entire UFO dynamic. Quote, it would be fantastic if there was some good evidence of something new to science. So far, there hasn't, he tells Popular Mechanics.
Isn't.
So far, there isn't. While he faces considerable angst for trying to debunk UFOs, West says he'd be as thrilled as anyone else if he was able to actually come across something that was truly unexplainable and unknown. There's no hard feelings, he says. I understand people are passionate, especially experiencers. So was this a matter of the government discovering something it didn't understand and therefore opting to avoid it altogether? Nick Cook, the former aviation editor of Jane's Defense Weekly and author of The Grid, tells Popular Mechanics this idea reminds him of a conversation he had with Ben Rich, the former director of Lockheed Skunk Works and the father of stealth. End quote. Cook says Rich told him when the ability for stealth aircraft was discovered, but not yet understood, there was considerable debate on what to do next. Do you put a bunch of money into developing something and end up not being successful because you don't understand it? Or do you table the entire idea until you have more science, which runs the risk of someone else figuring it out first? With stealth technology, the US military ultimately made the decision to move forward, which led to the development of the world's first stealth aircraft, the F-117 Nighthawk. I guess it would depend on how wide a knowledge gap you thought there was and how high was the risk for success, Cook says. Could I see how something should come up and the design would be made to truck something away like the final scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark? Yes, I could see how it could be possible. Throughout history, many inventions have preceded an understanding of the science that makes them work. Matthew Hirsch, a history of science and technology professor at Harvard University tells Popular Mechanics. Quote, engineers often do science in the course of their work, just as scientists invent. It's inevitable that we as a species will continue inventing things without a real understanding of how they work, at least until our science catches up. End quote. Being able to explain something with current science, Hirsch says, is merely an invitation to do more science, not a rejection of the scientific worldview as a whole. Suppressing good, non-fraudulent science because it challenges our beliefs is extremely dangerous, he says. Nobody has a right to do that, and it is contrary to the interests of humanity. That's what science is for. Fortunately, there is no vast scientific conspiracy to suppress divergent ideas. Sure. Well, okay, it's not an active conspiracy.
No, it's not a conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy. It's just a.
That's just how orthodoxy works.
Yeah, you're right.
It's emergent.
Emergent, exactly. More often, good science is suppressed by non-scientists for political reasons. Any discovery of extraterrestrial science or technology, then, is no reason to flush our political norms down the toilet, says Hirsch. Human beings have believed in the existence of extraterrestrial life for millennia, he says. I suspect that any revelation that UFOs exist would be met with something close to a shrug.
I don't think so.
Well, he's just thinking about other scientists, not non-science people. Not fearful people.
So some of the important things to note is just the how in the infrared they noticed that there was zero heat plumes. Like you always see heat plumes in the infrared for anything that's using any kind of propulsion system, any normal propulsion system that isn't based on some technology that is completely unknown. And all the videos you have no plumes of of any kind of propellant, even when they're like hovering or changing directions immediately and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's not something that they really talk about at all for some strange reason. Like I'm not seeing any of the pro UFO people.
Well, it's
mentioning that
a lot of times the pro UFO people don't pick out the really relevant.
Well, even in this article, I mean, like I guess they just focused on social proof so hard that there was no room for anything
here's
else.
The thing. Yeah, exactly. No, you had to. What most people are going to care about is, it's going to be social proof. The idea of truth on something like this is going to be entirely based on social proof and understanding who it is that saw it, who was involved, what agencies are involved,
and trying to say that this isn't even our science, that could be very easily debunked by felt as just an excuse by those who don't know anything about science. So if you're not a scientist, if you don't know anything about physics and somebody tells you this is not how our physics work, you'd more likely doubt them if you don't have the social proof around it. And
right.
Be like, you just don't understand science. And,
like there was one of the guys on the so this what's his name? Dave Fravor. Dave Fravor.
Commander Dave Fravor. Yeah.
Commander Dave Fravor went on Joe Rogan. I think it was October or something last year. And then the guy who made the he made it what was it called, the documentary with Bob Lazar. Yeah, he made the Bob Lazar documentary. He was there with him. And he was saying it's like, this is this is gravitational propulsion. It's totally within our current physics. No, it's not, because there are these ideas based on current physics, like the a gravitational drive, but that's completely theoretical, and anybody who's done any of the work on what what our physics says would be required to alter space-time to that level is something way outside. In other words, the amount of energy required to alter space-time to the point at which you could use it as the Alcubierre drive, I think is how it's pronounced, is absurd. So in other words, it's not within our even though the idea is based upon, it's still science fiction for the most part, even though theoretically you should be able to alter space-time locally to ride kind of a wave or something like that. And but that just does not fit with the energy requirements and things of that nature that should not be possible. So even when they somebody's saying it's totally within our current physics, no, it's not actually.
Yeah, I don't know why they would say that.
Well, it's because he just doesn't know. I mean, like the Alcubierre drive seems like it's whenever you kind of like first come in contact with it, it's like, oh well, you just change gravity, and and gravity is already warped by the Earth and the sun and everything else, so you just do that, and so that's how our physics works, right? No, well, no, not really. Oh, that's all I have to say.
That's all I gotta say about that. Let's see if there's.
So yeah, I guess what it was is that we're just trying to cover, instead of because people have been covering the UFO phenomena. Like if you've kept up with any of this, there are just thousands and thousands of people who are part of the military, who are part of aviation. There's just so many people who you can pick out from the crazies. Of course there's crazy people making up crazy bullshit. No kidding. There's always going to be, always has been. But there are all these other people with something to lose who only tell under duress, or are only under, like, after they've retired, and who all are telling the same stories repeatedly, and they're all part of these very reputable groups, and this has been going on for a very, very long period of time. And so what happens is people get confused by the fact that there's a lot of noise here, and so they don't pay attention to what is signaled, because it doesn't. And I guess the biggest thing is now it's a changed era, because the way that most people determine truth has to do with authority. And so now that there are these things that have to do with authority that are showing that this is has all of these various facets to it, that it is definitely something that there are really unknown things going on in our airspace that are technologically advanced. And if you continue to look into it, you see they're technologically advanced to a point at which we cannot understand it. Then that by itself is a very big deal. Now, I mean, when you start focusing on some of the other aspects of putting the story together and checking, okay, well, there are these things that are important, and these things, so there's different things that are important to different audiences. And when somebody is first encountering
hence
this,
you can't have a perfect argument.
Right, they're first encountering this, you need to give them the social proof part of it, which is what that article's about. But then when you go and you start looking at the various important aspects of how it works, once you've gotten past that, okay, there are a lot of reputable people who are not just who have access to the information, who are all saying the same things, and there are these reputable people who are eyewitnesses, who have, and it's admitted by the U.S. Navy that these are real videos that are taken in infrared and also eyewitnessed, and it's just like you have to stack all of these things together to be able to come to an overarching picture that it's not equivocal. You can't go hide your head in the sand with some ridiculous arguments about one part of it. There's if you can, but I'm saying it's beyond the level of being rational. At that point, you're being irrational. So there is a getting to that point it's really only gotten there now. Beforehand, the number of things you'd have to put together was too widely distributed, with too much noise in between, and without people knowing what to focus on.
Yeah, and I suppose we're slowly sort of getting people towards the more and more people are coming from being completely skeptical to maybe a little bit. So like more and more people are joining the sort of middle group, so we can speak
Well, there's a lot
to
of
a
people
bigger group.
who will remain skeptical,
Yeah.
as in like they won't be able because they believe they're skeptics are just another kind of believer. And you just have to understand that. And now, and most of them, they don't think that they're believers, which makes them even better at being a believer because they do not believe that they are a believer. So they're especially bought into their worldview. So there's not any convincing of them that'll happen until the vast majority of people believe something, and then they'll be like, "Yeah, I believe that all along," and that's where those skeptics will go. But for now, it's finally kind of gotten to that point where even the extreme skeptics that are just basically a different kind of believer now have to kind of look at it and say, "Wait a minute." The people I respect and the people from whom I get my understanding of truth are also now saying this thing, and so they kind of have to make a decision on where to go from here.
Yeah, true that. For a second, I had I'm okay. I just had a traumatic event that lasted half a second.
What's that?
Because I was looking on the stream ending and I muted desktop, and for a minute my brain thought that maybe our microphone was going through desktop instead of through its own separate thing.
So, you're like, so you thought that nobody was hearing us this entire time? No, there's been comments.
I know. But it took like half a second
because
to
you
get
have done
there.
it before, yes.
Yeah. There's a little trauma there. Cropped his head up.
Man, that
that coronavirus.
Yeah, that coronavirus and them chips, man. That piece of potato chip I inhaled gave me coronavirus.
Yes. Now you're coughing because of it.
I know. All you guys are gonna catch it now through the microphone.
Yep. The fun thing about it all is that I'm actually experiencing flu-like symptoms at the moment. So they're already catching it from me, and you want to be from me. Huh?
Are you? You keep saying that, and I think.
Well, by flu symptoms, I mean like my head is really stuffy, and there's no reason for it to be stuffy.
No, well, that can just be allergies, man.
I don't have allergies.
Oh, okay.
I don't get allergies. My throat doesn't hurt anymore, though. It did hurt this morning really hard, like real bad. I woke up with a sore throat. And it was sore throughout most of the day until about 2 hours ago. Well, I mean, when I swallow, I can still feel it a little bit. So, yeah, I have a sore throat, and my head feels stuffy. But, could just be a regular flu, even though people are saying it's the throw-uppy kind. That doesn't mean that it doesn't also have some sore throat and other things. But we should probably not share. We should probably not share our fluids. Yeah, fat chance that's gonna happen.
Right.
You're coming with me, baby. If I'm going, I'm taking you with me, whether you want to or not.
The Princeton, that's what I was looking for. So there's another ship.
The Nimitz and the Princeton, right?
Right, they were both part of the and it's important to note that they were watching these events go on for like 2 weeks. So this is not...
And all of this happened like so many. That's another point that they brought up during the Joe Rogan's interview, is that this stuff not only, well, we've had evidence from the 70s of unidentified flying objects, but this specific video that we're referencing, it's 2004. If this was foreign technology, we would have seen it by now. We would have seen it applied by now.
Yeah.
You would have seen, there would have been a power imbalance by now, 20 years later.
Yeah, the level of
practically
the
20
difference in technology.
15 years later,
the things we're talking about, I mean, that's one of the things that the pilot mentioned. It's like, these things that go from space down to water level in a matter of seconds. They're the maneuvers and the speeds that are being accomplished are just so outside of anything our military has, anything anywhere in our technology. It's just, not only is it not in our inventory of technology, it's not in our projected ability anytime in the next 80 years. It's like it's just a ridiculous difference in technology. And if anybody on the planet had this level of technology, they'd basically just be able to say to everybody else, you're doing things our way, period. because
Exactly.
there's just such a gigantic difference in the ability to wage war, etc., for whoever has this technology.
That's true.
The other thing that was interesting that I said while what was his name again?
Dave?
Yes.
Commander Dave?
Commander Fravor. Commander Fravor's.
You just don't want to call him Commander Dave, do you?
No, I don't. That's his. One of the things that he talked about is like he's fine with talking about it because it's like, yeah, it happened, and you know, nothing like that has happened again since then. But he's fine with talking about it, but apparently his co-pilot is not.
No, his wingman. No.
Or was it his wingman or was his co-pilot?
His wingman didn't go. They mentioned that he had a wingman and that he didn't want to go on record.
Okay, no, this is a female, so I think it might have been his
her.
Right.
Well, no, well, it said. Let's see.
I don't know if it was wingman, co-pilot. I'm not sure.
Popular Mechanic spoke with the Navy fighter pilot who was Commander David Ferver's wingman during the now famous Nimitz encounter. Agreeing to talk only under the condition of anonymity, the fighter pilot confirmed they testified in front of congressional leadership about their encounter.
Okay.
I've been requested repeatedly to go to the Pentagon and asked, "Is this what you saw?"
Yeah. So they
could be her.
And yeah, Fravor has said that he's continued to go to lots of meetings. You know, with
the government
various,
meetings, the committees.
Yes, repeatedly. But she was traumatized, is what he was talking about. That she does not like to talk about it because she's like, you know, they could have at least told us before we went out there that you guys have been seeing these things. So it was obvious that this kind of world-breaking event for her was very traumatizing to suddenly understand, to basically be confronted with the fact that there is something going on this planet that is way beyond your expectation of what is real. And so, it's somebody who had a tremendous amount of, I'm sure beforehand she was an extreme skeptic and kind of didn't believe in it and didn't think about it, didn't care about it.
A straight man.
Right.
Straight woman.
And then being confronted with it visually in front of you is, I mean, think about it for a moment. If you did encounter aliens, what kind of emotional impact that would have on you? It is kind of world breaking.
It is, yeah.
Imagine somebody, you know, walking in right now. I mean, just the thought of it.
Just the thought of it gave
like,
me the mountain view to like the almost like overwhelmed with emotion.
Right.
For sure. It's overwhelming. Yeah.
It's very overwhelming. So I could see how it's like, you know, you definitely would not want some like alien, you know, to come greet you in your kitchen suddenly without warning. That would
right. And to her, the sky is her kitchen. You know.
Right. Exactly. So I mean, any rational human being would shit their pants. You know, it's not an event that you want to have happen
without warning. It's like you could have warned us. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's just an interesting part of the experience where I mean, apparently he was fine with it. Which he doesn't seem to be, you know, somebody who even follows any of the like you listen to him, he didn't know anything about the whole alien stuff whatsoever beforehand. This is just his experience. So, you know, it's an interesting set of events there. But anyhow, yeah, I recommend the listening to the Fravor interview with Rogan from I guess, like I said, I think it was October, but whatever, it was very recent.
Yeah, we'll share it in the Patreon post for this talk.
Yeah, there's been repeatedly more and more stuff coming out, very recent. I mean, you know, this article we just read was just last month, right? So. Oh
yeah. Literally a month and 2 days ago.
Yeah, so this is very, very recent news. You know, this is not where, I mean, yeah, the stuff came out in 2017. There was still a lot of doubts around various things because people hadn't put all the pieces together. There's always like 10,000 people on the skeptic train ready to go. Haha, I'm smart because I believe what everybody believes, and here I'm a skeptic. You know, and there's always those, and so those are always, there's just so many of those people that it generally makes it kind of always feel like, yeah, nobody believes this, you know, because and so that's that was what was happening with the releases back in 2017. But then when you looked at them back then, if you were like really looking at it objectively, it's like, look at the behaviors of this thing, what it's doing, and the speeds that it's going. This is ridiculous. But I mean, I've been looking at this for years and been like, this is obviously something's going on, and for the longest time I was like, well, probably we just have really advanced tech that,
Right.
but
Now
still,
they've said, no, this is not ours. More than one person.
right.
The senators.
And not just that,
others.
it's like, well, okay, would the U.S. be putting up with anything that any other country is doing if we had technology that far in advance? And the answer is, I don't think so. So, yeah, there's definitely something going on. And then, then you look at we've got billions of planets in the Goldilocks zone, and, bacteria that, now we've got organisms, not just bacteria, not single-celled organisms, but multicellular organisms like water bears living in space, and then, bacteria that can withstand 1,000 times the amount of radiation that a human being can, and, bacteria that live in sulfuric acid, and bacteria that live in rock, and, just the idea that life hasn't arisen elsewhere has gotten to the level of being completely absurd. And by the way, there's been also recently in the news is Mars. There was one of the Mars rovers found something that is usually a product of life.
It's a bacteria, a byproduct that is usually made by organic instead of whenever they find it, it's usually been made by organic bacteria.
Yeah, it is.
The
but the thing is,
tryptophene, some sort of phenes.
Yeah, theophenes maybe.
Yeah, theophenes.
And it's, it is possible
right,
to create it.
Right, but that's why they're like, it's a question.
But it's the strongest evidence so far that there's
on Mars,
there's life on Mars, theoretically. I don't know that's necessarily true. I think that there may have been other things that they might have been discovering and not necessarily saying anything about. But
right, exactly. This, once again, the disclosure, need to know, the secrecy aspect of it is kind of annoying.
Yeah. So, interesting stuff.
Yes. It's very enjoyable. A lot of our patrons will have to re-listen to this because they had to duck out.
Yep.
So it was a long day. We started a little late as we went to the store. And I decided to go to 3 more stores just in case one of them had rice. Of course, none of them did. So that's a fun U.S. experience that I'm sure a lot of you are also experiencing. But yeah, I think that's it for us. And we never mentioned our conspiracy theory behind COVID-19. It's aliens have landed, and
that's it. They're distracting us.
They're distracting us with this because it really makes no sense for it to be a national emergency or anything when you've had 1,000 cases per however many million in the U.S. are, and only 2% death rate globally.
Yeah,
let's talk about conspiracy theories next week. Let's just do a whole episode on COVID conspiracy theories. Because some people are saying that it's man-made. Other people are saying that it's not a biological weapon, right? Others are saying that, it's a preparedness test. I'm saying it's aliens. But I also believe in the other 2 possibilities, potentially.
Yeah.
So,
well, it is up to, with people who are 80, it's a 15% death rate. Above
15?
Yeah, it's huge.
15 is not huge? You've said 50. I would think that's huge.
Okay, but comparatively, it's
compared
huge.
to other flu, I guess.
Right, and it's when you're over 70, it's up at 7 or 8%. That's still pretty huge. Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. It just feels like the mortality rates for things are way higher than that, and we are doing not a damn thing to change our way of living.
Yeah, the level of
preparedness
of it, and it's
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
When you compare it to the flu,
that's what
I'm talking about 30,000 deaths versus 1.2 million deaths at the same infection rate. So if it reached the same infection rate as the normal flu, you're talking about a significant jump, a very significant jump in the total number of people who would die.
Okay, so it is more infectious than the flu.
It's between 30 and 80,000. No, it's, if I remember properly, it's...
or is it less infectious than the flu?
No, it's. I believe I remember it being more infectious, more easily spread.
That seems right. Which
and actually, I'm not sure if it's the same or more. I don't remember.
I mean, if the spread rate is what worries people more than anything else, that would explain all the weird quarantine.
There's a level of there's a disconnect between personal risk, personal current risk, versus the necessities of making sure that it does not reach a very, very high infection rate very fast. So that is when we're talking about organizationally, it is important that organizationally that we have a lot of isolation. What's it called?
Quarantine?
No, there's a word that they've been using. The social, not social
Distancing.
social distancing. Yes, that's it. Making sure there's some social distancing so it does not reach those high levels is important, because there are people who do have it, and it does
And
spread.
there are vulnerable.
Right,
people
and it
in
spreads anomalously. You don't know when it's going to show up in a place, and it can become uncontained very quickly if you don't have people distancing. So there's a level of organization that I understand from the state level and from
right, from a
that
government
is,
level now.
right, that is kind of an important thing to do. But when it comes to each person's individual risk, that it's still only, it went from 1,100 to 1,300 and something total cases in the U.S. over like well over a week or so. I mean, it's just a very, very slight rise, and 1,300 cases is just such a tiny, just absolutely minuscule number of people compared to something that's significant.
Yeah.
And so your personal risk right now is extremely low. But should it start to get out, because people are not, if we weren't doing more quarantine stuff, if we weren't doing that, then it could become actually high risk for people. But as it stands right now, you could end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, but your likelihood, you're in much more danger driving around in your car right now.
Right.
Yeah, so it's
but given
theoretically,
the
according to
infection rate,
that is, given that their infection rates
right,
that they're
sort of makes
reporting
sense.
are accurate, and they may not be, because like there's this whole thing where they're saying like Ohio has 200,000 cases that somebody's like, and literally Ohio's saying that or something. I don't know. It's confusing.
Well, but if we don't have, but the problem is that we don't have the tests. So how do you know that it's what it is? Aren't there like
the
that's
testing
why
rate,
it costs like $1,000 plus $3,000 for a test.
There is a fairly low testing rate. So either way, it is one of those things where it's good practice, but the level of people's panic right now compared to where it's at is a little disproportionate, but perhaps it's actually kind of necessary to get people to make sure to not to do the social distancing, and make sure that this does not become a high infection rate in the U.S. Because it could very easily become the U.S. is probably the most vulnerable to social disruption because of how distributed we are of any large civilized country. If we were to become extremely disrupted by a very high infection rate, it would probably screw us up more than other countries. So either way, it is a good idea that it's good that people are distancing. The panicky buying and weird shit like that, no, not so much.
But I guess they're expecting the quarantine to go into effect and that they won't be able to get anything, so they want to make sure that they have their things. But yeah, so that's a little local news for you, as in global news.
Yeah, it is a weird event where the whole world is all concerned about the same thing right now. That's a very.
That's why I'm thinking aliens. Aliens. It's a test run for something.
It's weird.
It's weird. We should talk about it. We should have a whole conspiracy episode about it, if we feel like it. We could. We should do it. We'll do it. That's it. We'll do it. We gotta capitalize on the coronavirus. People searching for things with coronavirus. I'm gonna think about how to clickbait my title the best for next week. Do you have coronavirus? Find out in this test, in this video.
The surefire test in 5 minutes.
Yep. Well, all right. That's it for us. This was fun. I'm gonna talk to our patrons about things and stuffs after this, and we'll see y'all hopefully next week, maybe some other week. Ideally, it's going to be every other week until we reach our Patreon milestone. So if you'd like to help us out and also get more fun shows in your ear holes, like conspiracy theory shows like this one, because we'll have an opportunity to do less structured, more fun episodes if we do more of them. So I believe we are 70% or so to the next milestone. So come on in, check us out at patreon.com/AnnaCherry. There's lots of sexy things that you can get as rewards, or you can just let me know you don't want any rewards and you just want to support us monthly. Just set it and forget it. Perfectly fine too. Let me know. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.